Chapter 221, Vanguards that would lead him to victory. I wonder what Will is doing. Wendy muttered as she dried her hair. She had just stepped out of the bath after finishing the afternoon training with the members of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign. William had told her that he would accompany Amelia to her hometown in order to solve their barony's problem. I wish he'd brought me with him. Wendy pouted as she put on a set of clean clothes. Thor was currently sleeping on the top of her bed. He was more like Wendy's guardian than William's, but the latter didn't mind it one bit. In fact, he even gave Thor permission to stay by Wendy's side if he liked it. After fixing her hair in front of the mirror, she heard 3 knocks on her door. Wendy, are you there? It's me, Charlotte. Wendy hurriedly opened the door and allowed her good friend, Charlotte, to enter her room. Sorry, were you in the middle of changing clothes? Charlotte asked after seeing that Wendy's hair was still slightly wet. She also smelled the fragrant scent of soap on her body. No, Wendy replied. I had just finished fixing my hair when you knocked, big sister. Charlotte smiled and nodded her head in understanding. She had known Wendy for a long time and knew that the girl was a very honest and straightforward person. I came here because I want to share something with you, Charlotte said as she took out a small pouch from her pocket. Here. This is yours. Wendy curiously opened the pocket and a smile immediately appeared on her face. She estimated that there were over 20 candies inside the pouch, and it made her very happy. Thank you, big sister. Wendy gave Charlotte a big hug and the latter hugged her back. After a brief moment of intimacy, Wendy pulled away and giggled. Charlotte patted her head and smiled as well. Well then, I have to go. Charlotte lightly pinched Wendy's nose. The candies are in short supply right now, so don't share them with others. I'll come back again next week when I have more. Thank you, big sister. Wendy walked Charlotte out of her room. Whoever is supplying you these candies, please, tell them that I love the candies very much. Charlotte grinned and nodded her head. Both girls waved their hands to say goodbye, as they parted ways. Wendy excitedly placed a candy in her mouth as she walked towards the bed. The sweetness that soon followed made her close her eyes in appreciation. This candy is really good, Wendy muttered. Simply the best. She then ate another one before she sat on the bed. I hope you return soon, Will, Wendy muttered softly as the thought of the red-headed boy's smiling face that would occasionally make her heart skip a beat. She really hoped that the boy she liked would return soon, so that she could spend more time with him. The sound of goblins shrieking echoed inside the walls of the goblin crypt as William's trollhound army ate their fill. William hadn't lied when he told them that they wouldn't go hungry anymore if they followed him. When the bestiary was made on the first floor of the dungeon, the trollhounds started to explore the dungeon to get familiar with it. Whenever they encountered goblins, the trollhounds would immediately go for the kill. Fenrir watched as his subordinates feasted on the bodies of the goblins. Deep inside, he was very happy with his decision because it allowed him and his brethren to not suffer from starvation. After receiving William's blessings, the trollhound's body became more powerful and agile. He was now more like a wolf than a wild dog after his transformation. Although his subordinates were only Class E beasts, and he, Class D, none of the goblin parties were their match. Even though the hobgoblins were stronger than them, they couldn't be killed using normal means. Also, they numbered in the 70s. It was literally impossible for a party of hobgoblins to resist their rampage. Of course, William also gave them limitations. He didn't allow them to climb up to the 14th floor where the goblin shaman spawned. Numerous as they were, the goblin shaman was not an easy cookie to crack. After the Ring of Conquest was modified, the spawn rate of all the monsters on each of the floors increased dramatically. Each party that had a goblin shaman now consisted of 2 shamans, which was far more dangerous than the dungeon that Wendy, and her twin brother, Spencer, had challenged in the real world. In order to prevent any mishaps, William ordered Fenrir and the trollhounds to never step onto the 14th floor until all of them reached rank D, and Fenrir rank C. Anything else was fair game, so the trollhounds fought their way from the 1st floor up to the 13th floor of the dungeon crypt. Their non-existent battle style was slowly being formed and their team cooperation had started to establish. William tasked Fenrir to divide each team into groups of 10. After that, a captain was assigned to each group to make the commands easier. Fenrir was the commander, while the captains under him ensured that their formation wouldn't falter. In order to give them a more challenging training, Fenrir ordered each team to challenge different floors by themselves on a rotational basis. Because of this, the boss room up to the 13th floor became the main battleground of the trollhounds to perfect their teamwork. Although the new setup was good, it wouldn't change the fact that they were still rank E beasts. The boss room alone was quite difficult for 10 trollhounds to beat because of the difference in ranks. Still, they endured and challenged it over and over again. Although it was a painful experience, they were near immortal inside the goblin crypt because of their powerful regeneration ability. None of the goblins had the power to use fire and acid spells, so dying was not an issue. Fenrir joined his subordinates in battles against the hobgoblin leader. He was tired of being weak and helpless. That was why he fought with everything he had in order to not disappoint his new master, who had given him quite the blessing. William heard the systems report and was very satisfied with the results. The red-headed boy was confident that, given time, the trollhound army would be one of the vanguards that would lead him to victory. All he needed to do now was nurture them all until they became an unstoppable force that would help him conquer his foes in the battles that would happen in the future. Chapter 222, The Siskin Brothers. William was currently sleeping outside the Baron's residence. The reason? He was increasing the level of his recently obtained prestige class while he rested. Gained EXP, 20. Gained EXP, 20. Gained EXP, 20. William laid perfectly still on the bench as he slept peacefully. Dia and Ragnar were sleeping on William's stomach, while Ella laid on the ground beside him. After dealing with the titanic troll hound, William made it sworn oath not to attack any towns within the Helan Kingdom. As the guardian of the herd, any oath made to him by beasts belonging to the herd would automatically fall under David's jurisdiction. After taking his troll hound army inside his ring of conquest, the red-headed boy finally returned to Amelia's hometown to rest. He was up all night and was thoroughly exhausted from the events that had transpired a few hours ago. Gained EXP, 20. Gained EXP, 20. Gained EXP, 20. The Sun Knight job class was the prestige class he had received after acquiring Soleil from the king. After checking its description, William found out that the only way to increase the level of this job class was to absorb the sunlight during the daytime. Even if he killed monsters, it would be of no use. This was why William always chose to equip the job class during the day in order to maximize its effects. Prestige class, Sun Knight. Praise the sun. The Sun Knights were the proud knights that fought to protect the weak and deliver justice to evildoers. They were devout followers of the sun god, Helios, and grew strong under sunlight. It was even said that, when the sun was at its zenith, the Sun Knights were nearly invincible. Increase stats by 50% when exposed to sunlight. Receives plus 20 enhancement to all stats when exposed to sunlight. Increase resistant to light and fire spells by 50%. Increase damage of light and fire spells by 200% when exposed to sunlight. Can use solar flare once a day, can be used during the night as well. Passive skill Smile of the Sun is always active during daytime. Passive skill Aura of the Sun is always active during daytime. While the red-headed boy was sleeping, Amelia and her family were discussing the outcome of the battle. Earlier, before he went to sleep, William made a report to the Baron that the titanic green-scaled trollhound had left his barony and would no longer return. Philip was very happy with the news and profusely thanked William for his hard work. He even intended to give him a proper reward for freeing him from the biggest headache that his barony had encountered for some years. William politely declined the additional rewards and told Philip that he was only doing this in order to recruit Amelia and into his knight order. How old is he again? Amelia's mother, Sophia, asked. The commander is only 14 years old, Amelia replied. He's 14, and you're 17, Sophia thought out loud. I don't think there would be a problem if we betrothed you to him, right? Mother. Amelia's face became beet red as she held onto her mother's hand. The commander is already betrothed to someone. Don't make things difficult for both of us. I completely forgot about that Griffith girl, Sophia grinned. But, it's fine. From what I've heard, the two of them are not keen on getting together. Isn't that why the two of them are to have a duel in 3 years? This is a good time to form a connection with his family. No means no. Silly girl. I only want the best for you. Philip calmly sipped his tea from the side and allowed her wife to chat with their daughter. They had been married for a very long time and he knew that Sophia was only teasing Amelia because she had missed her terribly. What he didn't know was that Sophia was half serious with her proposal. If she and James met, the two would certainly get along and even conspire to make William and Amelia have a shotgun wedding. Fortunately, Lant and Bradford were on opposite ends of the kingdom and it would be difficult for either party to travel between the territories without using the teleportation gates. According to the rumors, your commander is a shepherd, correct? Philip inquired. Yes, Amelia answered. At least, that is what is written in the records. The Louise family may only be a barony, but they were the most informed among the nobles in the eastern faction. Their information network was widespread because they maintained good relationships and formed strong connections with all of their neighbors. Philip placed his teacup on the table as he looked at Amelia with a serious expression. From what I saw last night, he is no ordinary shepherd. He seems to be a beast tamer as well because he was able to summon multiple beasts at the same time. That, I'm not sure, Amelia lowered her head. This was the first time I've seen Commander William fight. Do you really plan to join his knight order? Philip raised an eyebrow. I promised to join if he was able to solve the problem of our barony. Amelia nodded. Father, I don't want to go back on my word. Philip and Sophia remained silent and simply looked at their daughter's determined expression. Truth be told, they didn't want her to do anything that would put her life in danger. Being part of a knight order may seem good on paper, but in reality, it was a very dangerous profession. Since they were the king's private army, they would be asked to take on covert missions that always affected national security. These missions would definitely involve danger, so the couple was not too keen about accepting Amelia's decision. Philip and Sophia were blessed with 4 children, and Amelia was the only daughter of their household. The two of them, and their sons, treated her like their treasure and would fight anyone who dared to hurt her. They would not give that person face, even if he was the commander of a knight order. Father, mother, please, trust me, Amelia pleaded. I believe that the commander will not sacrifice, or abandon, us when things get rough. Philip massaged his temple, while Sophia sighed. They could tell that they would not be able to dissuade Amelia from her decision, so there was nothing else to do but accept it. As if waiting for that moment, 3 identical boys walked into the room in a hurry. We've heard from Uncle Mark that Amelia is here. Where is she, old man? Don't you dare hide our sister from us. Philip's lips twitched as he did his best to stop himself from throwing fireballs at his triplets who were certified Siskins. Plenty of nobles had visited their barony to ask for Amelia's hand, but all of them were sent away by the 3 overprotective brothers. They even said that they wouldn't recognize anyone as Amelia's future husband unless he could beat all three of them at the same time. Big brother, Asher, Andrew, Aaron. Amelia greeted them happily as she stood up to hug them one by one. Little sister, why didn't you tell us that you were coming back? Asher asked. Those blasted trollhans ruined everything and the merchants stopped visiting our barony. I was not able to buy a present for you. Little sister, did you miss me? I'm sure you did. After all, I am the one that loves you the most in this family, Andrew interjected. Little sister, are there any guys bothering you in the academy? Aaron inquired with a tone laced with killing intent. Just tell us and we will immediately go there to kill. Talk to him about the meaning of life. That's right. Why did I forget about that? Sister, are there any scum that you want us to kill? Just say the word and it shall be done. It's a good thing I bought a new sword from the traveling merchant. He guaranteed its sharpness and I've been dying to find something to test it out on. Amelia's smile widened because she could tell how much her big brothers loved her. They always pampered her and would always beat up the boys who bullied her when she was young. All of them had brown hair and eyes like their father. Only Amelia inherited her mother's green hair and eyes. Philip, who was quietly listening to the scene, suddenly had an idea. A mischievous smirk appeared on his face as he made a gesture for the three boys to look at him. Actually, there is a boy outside the residence that is planning to recruit your sister into his night order, Philip explained. Your sister made a promise that if he was able to resolve our current situation, she would gladly be part of his personal night squad. What? A bastard dares to put my beloved little sister in danger. What? A bastard dares to make his move on my adorable little sister. What? A bastard dares to think impure thoughts of my cute, innocent, and kind sister. Unforgivable. The three boys spoke in unison and charged out of the residence. All of them wanted to find that bastard that had tricked their sister into joining his private army and tear him to shreds. Chapter 223, Until the Bitter End. William sensed killing intent headed in his direction and immediately woke up. He lifted Ragnar by the scruff on his neck and gently placed him on the ground while he held Dia firmly with his other hand. Ella raised her head and looked in the 3 o'clock direction. There, 3 very infuriated young men, who looked exactly like each other, stormed towards him. William frowned because he didn't recognize the 3 of them. What confused him more was that the 3 were seriously releasing killing intent and it made him wonder if he had somehow offended them. Are you the brat that is lusting over my beautiful little sister? Are you the brat that is planning to train my little sister to become your plaything? Are you the brat that is thinking of doing this and that with my little sister? No. No, and no, William answered. Are you talking about Amelia? The 3 boys ignored his reply and glared at William hatefully. What? You're not lusting over my beautiful little sister. What? You're not planning to train my little sister to become your plaything. What? You're not thinking of doing this and that with my little sister. Unforgivable, the 3 boys replied in unison. Are you saying my little sister is not good enough for you? Die. The 3 boys summoned their weapons and simultaneously attacked William. The latter activated his movement technique to dodge their attacks by a hair's breadth. He also summoned his staff to parry their blows from time to time. Although the 3 were good fighters, their attack patterns were too straightforward and easy to read. Even so, William had to admit that their teamwork was quite formidable. If not for his mastery over his movement technique, he might have experienced difficulties in dealing with 3 opponents at the same time. Are they attacking me because I said no to their earlier accusations? William pondered as he parried a heavy blow that sent him skidding a few meters away. I lied earlier, the half-elf said to the 3 boys. In fact, I think Amelia is very beautiful. I would love to try doing this and that with her. The 3 boys paused in their attacks, which made William breathe a sigh of relief. Now you reveal your true colors. Now you reveal that you are indeed a lecherous bastard. Now you reveal that you want to do this and that with our little sister. Unforgivable. The triplets attacked William once again, but this time, their attacks were more frenzied than before. William's lips twitched as he parried and dodged their relentless assault. There was only one thing on his mind and that was to f***ing beat the sh*t out of these Siskin bastards. System. I know. Monk job class, right? Yes, please. Soon, yells filled with pain and B*3 resounded throughout the residence. The male servants who heard these screams subconsciously placed their hands behind their back to protect their bums from being stabbed. Amelia, Philip, and Sophia rushed outside of the house when they heard the screams, only to find an enraged William beating the crap out of the triplets who dared to disturb his sleep. You Siskins! Do you want me to do this and that with your sister or not? William roared. Make up your goddamn minds. He then stabbed his staff forward to hit the 3 boys' chrysanthemums with deadly accuracy. The boys howled in pain like pigs being slaughtered and begged William for forgiveness. Amelia, who heard William's words, almost did a double take because she didn't fully understand what he meant with his words. William was about to keep hitting the older boys when he noticed Amelia, and her parents, approaching his location. He promptly hid the staff behind his back, while giving a swift kick to the older boy's bum, that was closest to his feet. Lord Philip, I found these 3 suspicious individuals in your residence and decided to apprehend them for questioning, William said in a righteous voice. He then urged the system to change his job class back to the Sun Knight before the 3 people reached his location. William's body seemed to glisten under the sunlight, as a peaceful smile that belonged to a priest without sin appeared on his face. He looked so holy, so amiable, that even Philip felt like he was looking at a different person. Commander, these 3 are my older brothers, Amelia commented as she walked in front of the 3 groaning men under William's feet. I see. William nodded sagely. I apologize for hurting them. I was not aware that they were your brothers, I'm sorry. William's aura was so divine that Amelia, Philip, and Sophia felt that they were sinners in front of him. William's passive skill Aura of the Sun, and Smile of the Sun, was a combo passive skill that made Sun Knights get along with anyone. When these two skills were active, the Sun Knight's charisma would reach a very high level that even a crying baby would stop crying when they saw William's smiling face. And no. It was their fault for assaulting the commander, Amelia replied. I promise that I will talk to them later, so, can you please forgive them? What is there to not forgive? This was all a misunderstanding. I don't particularly mind. William chuckled before stepping on the hand that was about to grab his foot from below. Aaron was about to shout, but Amelia's glare made him stop in his tracks. The pitiful older brother could only bite his lip in frustration as he endured the pain he was currently experiencing. Commander, why don't we go inside the house? Sophia proposed. We have many special delicacies prepared for you. William was reluctant to go because of the experience points that he could gain from sunbathing. Even so, he still decided to nod his head and smile like a good boy before he followed Sophia towards the residence. The titanic green-scaled trollhound looked back at the barony of Bradford one last time before giving a low growl. The hundreds of trollhounds that followed behind it followed its orders obediently. They were now headed towards the north, where the tribes lived. Since it was technically not part of the Hellan kingdom, the titanic trollhound decided to go there to seek new prey. It intended to recover its strength first and raise its ranks before finding William to find trouble with him. Just like the red-headed boy, the titanic trollhound was a beast that held grudges. It hated humans to the core and would find no greater pleasure than to feast on their flesh. The giant beast still regretted the fact that it was not able to kill all of those who had experimented on him and held him in captivity. At the last minute, half of them were able to escape while he broke free from the seals that they had placed on his body. I will find all of you bastards and make you pay for what you did to me, the titanic trollhound vowed in his heart. After that, I will deal with you next, William von Ainsworth. The hundreds of trollhounds left the borders of Bradford and the humans that saw them along the way almost panicked when they met them along their journey towards the other towns and cities. Merchant caravans and commoners, who were traveling the roads that they passed, collapsed in fear when the horde of monsters appeared before them. Although the trollhounds were salivating at the sight of helpless prey, they couldn't attack any of them because of the powerful restriction that had been placed on their bodies. Using the power of the god of contracts, William made sure that they would not be able to break their word. If they did, they would combust into flames, leaving only ashes behind. The ordinary trollhounds may not be able to survive this oath, but the titanic trollhound was different. With its rank, and near immortality, William's contract didn't scare it one bit. The only reason why it was honoring its oath was due to a nagging fear that was coming from its very being. For some reason, it felt afraid. Afraid that if it broke its word, it would suffer a fate worse than death. The titanic trollhound didn't want to take its chances and break the oath. He still wanted to take revenge on those that had experimented on, and tortured, it every day to test its regeneration ability. It refused to die until its revenge was fulfilled. This was the sole meaning of its existence and it was determined to carry it out until the bitter end. Chapter 224, Underground Base Part 1. Somewhere in an underground facility in the southern continent. How are the preparations coming along? A man seated on a throne made from blackstone asked. My lord, the Anisha and the Zealand dynasties are making preparations for war, a man wearing a black robe reported. The soonest they will make their move is in 3 months, the longest is 5. Our members are laying the groundwork of the siege even as we speak. The man seated on the throne nodded his head. Are the altars constructed? My lord, half of the altars are already built, the black-robed man answered. We estimate that they will be finished by the time the war officially starts. Too slow, make sure to finish them in 2 months. As you wish, my lord. The man seated on the throne rested the side of his face on the palm of his hand. How about the crown prince, any news from him? The man wearing the black robe raised his head to look directly at his master. He said that he is now looking for the whereabouts of the key. I think that the crown prince is being serious this time around. The man sitting on the throne snorted, tell him that if he is too slow, we will find someone else to take his place. We have no need for useless individuals. I will pass your message to him, my lord. Go, and make sure that all my orders are carried out. Yes, my lord. William frowned as he moved towards the mountains within the territory of Bradford. The miasma seeping into the land had lessened after the trollhounds had left the territory, but they were only responsible for spreading the miasma. The source was still active and William was planning to see if he could do something about it. A 1.5-meter tall trollhound, with dark silver fur, guided William and Ella towards a secret passageway that led to the inner depths of the mountain. Commander, where are we? Amelia asked. She was currently riding with William on Ella's back as they traveled the underground passageway. We are in a secret base that was abandoned by sorcerers, William replied without looking back at her. This is the place where the trollhounds were born. Originally, William didn't plan to bring Amelia along. However, since this was the barony of her parents, he decided to let her accompany him on his investigation. Amelia's face became grim when she realized that an unknown organization had managed to infiltrate their territory and even build an underground base without her father's knowledge. As a daughter of the barony, she was very concerned about the long-term repercussions of having this place under her father's nose. Fenrir gave a low growl signaling that they had reached their destination. After being knighted by William, the trollhound's body grew larger and its rank rose as well. Currently, Fenrir was at the peak of rank D. William estimated that his new ally would break through to rank C within the month, after ingesting the high-grade beast core that he had given Fenrir a few hours ago. Its body was no longer skinny like a dog suffering from malnutrition. Instead, its body became lean and strong and oozed with untapped potential. William extended his senses as he scanned his surroundings. From what he could tell, the place was abandoned, but he didn't let his guard down. The half-elf nodded at Fenrir and the latter went ahead to see if there was anything suspicious inside the base. 10 minutes later, it returned and gave its report. There's no one here, Master, Fenrir reported via telepathy. Good. William nodded. Take me to the pool of miasma you and your brethren were tossed into to suffer. Fenrir hesitated a bit, but in the end, it obeyed William's order. It had very sad and painful memories from this place and it wished that it could destroy the place completely, but William didn't want that. His master wanted to understand who these people were and Fenrir didn't want to get in William's way. After walking for a few minutes, they finally arrived at a chamber where a cloud of miasma was rising through an open hatch. Clearly, whoever built this place made sure that the chamber was properly ventilated to avoid miasma poisoning. This is... Amelia's eyes widened in shock. A miasma pool. William dismounted from Ella's back and carefully walked towards the pool in order to observe it properly. Fenrir had already told him about the miasma pool, but it was bigger than he had expected. It was at least 100 meters long and 50 meters wide. It was the size of 2 Olympic swimming pools joined together. The water seemed to be boiling due to the thousands of bubbles and steam that were rising from its surface. The fur on Fenrir's body was standing up on end as if it was remembering something very scary. If not for William's presence, it might have already bolted out of the chamber and run back towards the exit. The memories it had of the secret base, and the organization that ran it, were still fresh in its mind. System, do you have any suggestions? Answering the host's question, there are 3 ways that we can deal with the current situation. First, we can upgrade the functions of the Ring of Conquest to allow dungeon modifications of the Goblin Crypt. However, it would require 10,000 God points. Currently, the host's balance is only 1,000 God points. William patiently waited because it knew that the system was still not finished with its explanation. The second option is to use the power of Solile to completely dry out the pool. However, I don't recommend this. The excess vapor would rise up to the air and scatter across the land. When this happens, the barony of Bradford will be contaminated, killing all living things within it. William nodded in understanding. He agreed with the system's explanation and waited for their last option. The last option is to absorb the miasma by using the black rose seal on the host's body. By doing so, the miasma will be completely eradicated, but it may cause side effects to the host's body. Side effects? What are the side effects? William crossed his arms over his chest. Although he wanted to help Amelia and her father, he didn't want to sacrifice his body and health to that extent. He had already finished his end of the bargain and Amelia had officially joined his order. Doing more might only make things difficult for him. Give me a moment while I gather information and analyze the possible side effects that the host might suffer. While the system was doing its calculations, William walked towards what seemed to be lockers at the corner of the chamber. He tried to open one of them, but they were locked, and seemed to require a key. William smirked while taking out the lockpicking kit from his storage ring. While he and Ezio traveled the land, he had leveled up his thief skills by doing some shady business like infiltrating a corrupted official's house, stealing from them, and gathering important documents. After a minute of tinkering, William managed to open one of the drawers and what he found inside made his expression turn grim. Chapter 225, Underground Base Part 2. Modified Human Troll Army Project, William muttered as he read the document in his hand. A humanoid hybrid that has superior regeneration ability with only one weakness, acid strong enough to melt adamantium. Amelia who was standing beside him sucked in a cold breath because she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Why you mean this facility was made to turn humans into trolls? Amelia couldn't contain her outburst. And they built it here in our barony, this means that they were planning to use our citizens for their experiments. Amelia glared hatefully at the pool of miasma in the distance while gnashing her teeth. If not for the fact that something had gone terribly wrong with the organization's plan, their barony might have suffered a calamity of untold proportions. William didn't reply to her and read the rest of the document. This time, he read silently. He didn't want Amelia to be blinded by rage and destroy the whole facility out of anger. He needed to gather more information about this hidden organization that he was hearing about for the first time. After reading the scroll, the red-headed boy picked up a small book that seemed to be a diary. Just as he expected, the daily logs of the sorcerer who managed this facility were recorded. Fenrir had told him these things beforehand, so William had a general understanding of what had happened to the base. Day 18 of the month of the Empress. We bought a few human slaves from the capital of the Hellan Kingdom and brought them here to be experimental subjects. They were made to drink the latest potions we had concocted to help modify their bodies from the inside. The modification will finish in 3 days, I can't wait to see the results. Day 22 of the month of the Empress. The bodies of the human slaves have turned green, but aside from that, nothing seems to be different. They were still rational and there were no signs of their intelligence degrading. We'll wait 2 more days before we proceed to phase 2. Day 24 of the month of the Empress. One of the female slaves died after her body encountered some side effects from the potion. Such a useless B***tch. She wasn't even worth the coin that was used to purchase her from the slave trader. Although there was a small mishap, the remaining slaves were still good to go. All of them were forced to the pool to undergo the second phase of the experiment. Day 25 of the month of the Empress. All the experimental subjects died before they completed their transformation. I guess the miasma was too much for them to resist. No problem, we will just modify the potion in order to give them a tougher skin. Day 12 of the month of the magician. Failure. All of them are failures. I refuse to believe that my research is wrong. Perhaps we are using the wrong approach? I better ask the organization to give me some beasts to experiment on first. Day 20 of the month of the magician. Wild dog and troll blood are unexpectedly compatible with each other. This is a good start. Also, test subject 288 is showing great potential. Among the troll hounds that were created, its transformation has surpassed my expectations. Day 8 of the month of the Hierophant. Success. We created a new breed of monster. Ha 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 ha. A truly wonderful creation. With this, the organization will be able to give me additional funds for my research. Day 12 of the month of the Hierophant. Something is wrong. Experimental subject 288 suddenly broke through to the centennial rank. The chains binding it were not enough to contain it. I need to do something fast before things get out of hand. The journal ended that day and William couldn't find any more diaries in the other locked drawers inside the chamber. All he saw were the formulas that were used to make the body modification potions that were used on humans and beasts alike. Fenrir said that the titanic green-scaled trollhound rebelled a few weeks ago and managed to kill more than half of the researchers in the facility, William thought. The sorcerer was only able to save his life because he used a teleportation scroll. William clicked his tongue after connecting the dots together. He felt regret that the titanic trollhound wasn't able to kill the mastermind behind its suffering. So that sorcerer is still at large, William narrowed his eyes as he gazed at the pool of miasma. This is troublesome. The half-elf was feeling slightly anxious because if the sorcerer resumed his experiments elsewhere, a new titanic trollhound might be born. Also, there was a possibility that the sorcerer had managed to gather enough data to make the human troll project a reality. If this was true, then only a handful of individuals would be able to stop an army of mutated trolls if they decided to wreak havoc inside the Hellan kingdom. While William was deep in thought, the system finished its calculations and notified him right away. There are 3 possible side effects that might occur to the host after the Black Rose seal absorbs the pool of miasma. The first one is that the power of the seal would be strengthened and the host's inability to use magic would be extended for 4 more years. William grimaced when he heard the first side effect. This was something that he didn't want to have happen to him. He was thankful that he lost his magic power a few years ago because it made him realize his shortcomings. It also allowed him to train and build his foundation. However, having an extension to his magicless state was something that he wanted to avoid at all cost. The second one is that the host will unlock a new prestige class called Dread Lord. This is an extremely rare job class that is a level higher than most prestige classes, however, the chance of acquiring it is only 0.000000001%. If the host fails to acquire this job, the host's body will explode due to the inability to contain the miasma. The third side effect is that the host's body will undergo a transformation and turn into a centennial monster slime made from miasma. The chances of this happening is 40%. William sighed. None of the options were appealing to him. Although the Dread Lord job class was enticing, the percentage was just too low for him to take a gamble. System, are there any other options? William asked. I don't want to leave this miasma pool here. The sorcerer might come back and, if he does, he will come fully prepared with reinforcements. Sorry, host. I can't think of other means aside from using god points which we currently do not have. Is there no other way? William wondered. I swear I saw something about miasma somewhere. It was at that moment when William remembered the notice he received not long ago from the god shop. He immediately asked the system to retrieve the mail that they had received from the alchemy god. The system hadn't brought it up at first because William had told the system to ignore it, as it was highly unlikely that they would ever come across those ingredients while in the academy. The system lit up his status screen with a letter from the god shop about the alchemy god's request for ingredients. God shop mail. Attention to the devout followers of the gods from the 10,000 temple. Great rewards are waiting for each and every one of you. The god of alchemists has issued a commission that is open to everyone. He is currently looking for extremely rare and potent ingredients that he will use for his experiments. If any of you are able to acquire the items on our list, please, send a message to me, Mercurius, the manager of the god shop, directly. I will assist you in transporting the materials to the alchemy god free of charge. However, anyone who sends me troll messages will immediately be banned from using the god shop for 100 years. Here is the list of materials that the alchemist god is looking for and the rewards associated with them. Spring of Life, 100,000 god points. Baphomet's Horn, 50,000 god points. A Litter of Empyrean's Blood, 20,000 god points. Ink of Krakens, 10,000 god points. The list was long, but William's and the system's attention locked in on the last entry on the list. Liquefied miasma, 1 god points per liter. William gulped and sent his thoughts to his dependable partner. System, 5 million liters. I still haven't asked a question. Host, there's no need for the long-winded approach. Should I contact the god shop manager, Mercurius? Yes/no. William scratched his head and gave his answer. He didn't know whether he should laugh or cry because the system had taken the initiative to calculate how many liters of liquefied miasma were present in the pool. Not only that, it was only a moment away from getting in touch with the manager of the god shop. Moments later, Mercurius replied to his message and told William how the transaction would be made. The half-elf rubbed his hands together in anticipation. He was looking forward to how many god points he was going to earn after this one-time transaction with the god of alchemists. 5 million god points. William wanted to laugh out loud. He greedily checked the weapons in the god shop while waiting for the exchange to finish. He had already asked Ella to take Amelia outside the chamber with the excuse that he would personally deal with the miasma that was threatening the peace of the land she was born in. William was feeling good about this unexpected turn of events. What he didn't know was that his happiness would be short-lived. Chapter 226, Yin-Yang Cauldron. Can you repeat that? We got 50,000 god points from the god of alchemists after exchanging the entire pool of miasma. William blinked once then twice before he tilted his head in confusion. 50,000 god points. William asked. System, I think you're missing a couple of zeros there. Well, I have two pieces of news for you, host. What do you want to hear first? The good news or the bad news? William didn't answer the system right away. Instead, he crossed his arms over his chest and took some deep breaths. When he was finally calm again, he asked the question that was on his mind. What is the bad news? The miasma pool is not made from pure miasma. According to the god of alchemist, the pool only consisted of 50,000 liters of liquefied miasma and the rest was spring water. After the water mixed with the miasma, it got contaminated. Basically, what we saw was only a diluted pool of miasma. Diluted. William couldn't believe what the system had told him. However, after he pondered for a while, he realized that the god of alchemists had no reason to lie to them. Since he was the expert in the field, if he said that the miasma pool was diluted then it was indeed diluted. Oh well, 50,000 god points is still good, William sighed. Although 50,000 and 5 million were miles apart, he was still able to accept the outcome since he got it for free. Then, what is the good news? The good news is that we are the first ones to deliver one of the items on the alchemist's list. In return for our fast response to his commission, he sent us a freebie. A meter-wide golden cauldron appeared in front of William. The cauldron had a unique design on it that reminded him of those antiques that were being sold in second-hand stores that he had visited in the past. It hovered in the air as if waiting for the boy to touch it. After confirming with the system that there was nothing wrong with the cauldron, William finally reached out his hand to touch it. The moment the cauldron was safely in his hands, a series of text messages appeared on his status page. Ding! Would you like to acquire the alchemist job class? Yes/no. I knew it, William thought as he appraised the cauldron in his hands. The cauldron's outer layer was plated in gold and embedded with runic letters. It felt warm to the touch as if it had just been recently placed over a fire. At the very base of the cauldron, the symbols of the yin and yang could be seen. Naturally, this yin and yang represented the identity of the cauldron which appeared on William's status page after he used his appraisal skill. Yin-Yang Cauldron, Replica. Mythical rank artifact. This cauldron is a recreation of the very first cauldron that the alchemist god used when crafting his pills. Increase the chance of success of pill making by 50%. Has a 10% chance of creating random pills with every use. Warning. The effects of these pills are completely random. Use at your own risk. Maximum pills that can be made inside the cauldron is 100. Can enlarge itself up to 3 meters wide. Special function, the cauldron can safely store any kind of material or ingredient no matter how dangerous or volatile it is. No fire, poison, or acid is strong enough to melt this cauldron. The god of alchemist treated this cauldron as his personal storage artifact whenever he visited the different planes to collect the ingredients he needed for his alchemy. This mythical artifact is now soul-bound to William von Ainsworth. Seeing the gift from the alchemist god, William remembered the cultivation novels that he had read when he was still on Earth. The alchemists were able to craft expensive pills that allowed cultivators to raise their ranks and break through their bottlenecks. There were many cultivators in the world of Hestia and most of them resided in sects like the Misty sect. Usually, each sect had their own grandmaster alchemist that catered to the needs of the entire sect. These alchemists were given VIP treatment and were often regarded as treasures of their respective factions. William chose yes and acquired the alchemist job class. Alchemist. A mixture of sugar, spice, and everything nice, unless they blow up in your face and kill you. That is the alchemist job class. Increase the chances of success of pill making by 10%. Acquired alchemical recipes, basic. Host has learned skill, unstable concoction. Unstable concoction. During pill making, the alchemist can forcefully make the pill creation unstable, turning it into a deadly weapon of mass destruction. Effect of the concoction may differ depending on the ingredients and materials used. William opened the page for the alchemical recipes, basic, and read its contents. Brick. Can be used to build houses or used as projectiles to hit your enemies. Can be used as a weapon for close combat. Mix soil and water into a thick mud. Add some sand, then mix in the straw, grass, or pine needles. Bake it on medium fire for 10 minutes. According to legend, there was once a cultivator who was able to dominate the world using a brick. This legendary brick was called the 69 brick. This brick is able to ignore all kinds of defenses. One hit on the head will knock out your opponent for 1 minute with 100% success rate. It can also be used repeatedly which makes this brick a feared weapon by one and all. Chance of crafting ordinary brick, 99%. Chance of crafting the 69 brick, 0.0000000000000001%. William's lips twitched as he read the recipe of the brick. He didn't believe that such a ridiculous and overpowered brick could exist in reality. I thought I would be crafting pills. William scratched his head as he looked at the other recipes in his status page. Why is this alchemical recipe book all about bricks, plates, cups, spoons, forks, and kitchen knives? Just what kind of stupid alchemist crafts these things? William ignored the list of recipes and jumped to the last page of the book. It was there where he found the notes that were left by the author and found something interesting. Alchemy is all about creating new things. If you already know the recipe for how to turn stone into gold, the value of gold will be lost, and life will be boring. Every alchemist should learn to be creative. A flower by the roadside, a strand of hair, and even a handful of dirt could become something else if you are willing to give alchemy a try. P.S. It would be best if you get life insurance just in case something goes wrong with your experiments. You'll never know when you'll kick the bucket. Full Metal Alchemist, Edward L. Freak. William sighed and stored the yin-yang cauldron inside his ring of conquest. Although his gains from this small expedition were completely unexpected, he was still happy that the main problem that plagued the barony was solved. He returned to the Baron's residence and shared with Philip everything he had discovered. Philip was shocked after hearing William's story. After bidding his daughter goodbye, he immediately set out with his men to investigate the headquarters left by the unknown organization. William and Amelia, on the other hand, traveled back to the academy to report the completion of their commission. Although he was still thinking about the secret organization, William was forced to push his thoughts about them aside for now. There were still some things that he needed to do, as a commander of the Night Order, and that was to ensure that all of his subordinates were properly equipped before the war officially started. Chapter 227, Oathkeeper's Key. In the town of Lant. A black raven landed on the ledge of Celine's window, carrying a parcel on its leg. Oliver, who was sitting on top of his perch, narrowed his eyes before waving his talon. The raven didn't move as the parcel on its legs flew towards the parrot monkey. When it was only half a meter away from his perch, the parcel glowed and a message appeared in the air in front of Oliver. The Saleh, Nasir, Reese, and Iroan clans are gathering their young prodigies to their ancestral domains. Also, certain influential factions in the central continent are making their move. Like the old elven families, they are also preparing for a big event. The only problem is that no one, aside from their patriarchs and a few elders, know what is about to happen. I consulted with the patriarch of the Rayleigh family and he made a divination. According to him, he couldn't see what was going to happen in the future. However, he knew where it would happen, and that was none other than the southern continent. Tell my granddaughter to be careful. The current balance of power in the Silver Moon continent is quite volatile and not even the Aenarian family is safe. For now, I've decided to keep a low profile and not mess with these muddled waters. Oliver, keep my granddaughter safe and remember the vow that you made to me. I will hold you accountable if anything happens to Ceylon. May the goddesses of the Twin Moons bestow their blessings upon the two of you. Oliver glanced at the raven and nodded his head. The raven nodded back and flew away. It had completed its mission, so it was now time to return to its master. The parrot monkey sighed as he sat on his perch. Soon, the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs reached his ears. Was that a letter from grandfather? Celine asked. Yes, mistress, Oliver replied. It has begun. Celine nodded her head and went out of the house to visit James. The two of them, and the veterans of Lant, needed to make preparations for the calamity that was about to befall the southern continent. Father, Lionel said with a serious expression. I was reading the ancient scrolls during my history lessons and came upon something interesting. It said that the first king of the Hellan kingdom always wore a necklace with a key attached to it. I'm very curious, what do you think that key is used for? Aside from the records saying that the first king treated it like a treasure, no other information about it can be found anywhere. Noah lowered the book in his hand as he glanced at his oldest son. Oh? I never thought you were someone that liked history. 2 years ago, you said that you didn't want to read about anything related to the history of our kingdom because it was already in the past. Why are you suddenly getting curious now? Lionel smiled as he faced his father's stare head-on. As the crown prince of the Hellan kingdom, it would be embarrassing if someone were to ask me about how our kingdom was founded. If I am not able to answer this question, then wouldn't I become a disgrace? True. Noah nodded his head in agreement. Very well, I will tell you what I know. The key that you are referring to is called the Oathkeeper key. I also don't know much about the key, but from what my father told me, the first king had a secret domain where he hid all of his precious treasures. Naturally, no one knows where this domain is. He didn't share this knowledge with anyone, not even to his own son. The only legacy he left him was the Hellan kingdom and the Oathkeeper key. You could even say that the kings that followed him, did everything in their power to search for this elusive domain. However, all of their efforts were in vain. Lionel listened seriously and nodded from time to time. The secret organization said that they would support and enthrone him as the emperor of the southern continent if he could give them the Oathkeeper key. After hearing about the key's importance, Lionel was having second thoughts. If he could find the key as well as the domain, perhaps he would be able to get his hands on extremely rare resources that would boost the military might of the Hellan kingdom. If that were to happen, he could command the kingdom's armies to conquer the entirety of the continent and declare himself as the new emperor. However, the agent of the organization that was keeping in touch with him left him some words that made him anxious. You are not the only candidate that our organization is supporting. If the key is not in our hands within 2 months, our deal is over. Lionel had always thought that he was the only candidate that the organization was grooming to become the emperor of the southern continent. Although he wasn't a narcissist like William, he was someone who thought highly of himself. For him, he was the best, and the only one who had the right to stand above others. He couldn't tolerate being used as a stepping stone by others, and the organization's veiled threat made him anxious. Because of this, he decided to put more effort in finding the key. I still have 2 months, Lionel thought. After I get the key from my father, I will conduct a search to find the first king's hidden domain. If what I find inside is greater than the benefits of being an emperor, then I will cut ties with the organization. Lionel was an ambitious person. He didn't want to be treated like a subordinate. The only reason he was trying to keep a good relationship with the secret group was because he felt that his current position was being threatened by his younger brother, Rufus. The Crown Prince only had grade C talent in magic, but he compensated this shortcoming by training hard as a swordsman. Right now, he was in the middle stages of the gold rank and the king had recognized his efforts and gave him the title of Crown Prince. Even so, that didn't stop Lionel's anxiousness. He knew that his father was a cunning man. Although the title of Crown Prince was currently on his head, the king of the Hellan Kingdom could easily take it away. Noah was not only cunning, but ruthless as well. It just didn't show on the surface because the kingdom had been experiencing an era of peace and prosperity before the beast tide and dungeon outbreaks happened. While Lionel was thinking of these things, Noah closed the book in his hand and summoned a small ornate box from his storage ring. He then passed it along to Lionel and asked him to open it. The Crown Prince obeyed his father and opened the small box. What lay inside was a key made from an unknown material. This was the first time he had seen such a material. That is the Oathkeeper key, Noah said. It is a key that is passed down to the reigning king of the kingdom. Naturally, that key will be passed to your hands after I step down from my position. Until then, I will keep it safe until your coronation. Lionel had a complicated look on his face as he looked at the key in his hands. He never thought that the key he was looking for could be obtained so easily. Now, there were only 2 questions going through his head. Should he give the key to the organization? Or should he keep it a secret from them while he looked for the hidden domain that was somewhere within the kingdom? 2 months. I still have 2 months. Lionel calmly returned the key to the ornate box and passed it back to his father. Since I already know where the key is, I will start looking for the domain. Lionel knew that the organization needed the key desperately if they were willing to trade the entire southern continent for it. Suddenly a realization passed through his body like a lightning bolt. The Crown Prince didn't know if his hunch was true, but if it was then that meant that the organization already knew the location of the hidden domain. Lionel didn't want to think of such a possibility because that would put him into a corner. If that was really the reality, then he would have no choice but to relinquish the key to the organization. He just hoped that when he did give them the key, the organization would honor their promise and make him the emperor of the southern continent. Sidonie, you will be mine, Lionel thought as he pushed back the bitterness in his heart with the face of his beloved princess. He was fine even if the treasure within the hidden domain was plundered. As long as the most beautiful young lady in the continent, the 3rd princess of the kingdom of Frisia, Sidonie, became his woman, then he could accept the outcome. Since he had already confirmed the location of the key, it was now time to put his plan into motion. He would force the organization to bring the 3rd princess to the Hellan Kingdom as a guarantee that they would honor their promise. Chapter 228, Thousand Beast Domain Part 1. Spencer rolled on the ground and was about to get back up when Drake fell on his body, pinning him down. Get off me! Spencer roared as he pushed aside his comrade at arms. Drake lay on the ground panting and didn't get up right away. Spencer, on the other hand, picked up his spear that had fallen several meters away from him and charged at Ella. He activated his aura and spear intent to increase his speed and get close to his opponent. Unfortunately, Ella didn't wait for him. Instead, she used her rush attack and met Spencer head-on. Spencer was a step too late and was unable to use his weapon to strike. Ella's horns impaled the boy's chest and pierced through his heart. Spencer screamed in pain before turning into particles of light. Ella then fired 3 consecutive benevolent shots at Drake, who was still lying on the ground. Soon, he, too, turned into particles of light and disappeared from the Colosseum. It's really hard to fight the commander's goat, one of the first years winced after seeing Spencer's gruesome death. Even 2 of our strongest fighters can't beat her in a 2-on-1 battle, an 18-year-old member of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign commented. Class C beasts are really on another level. Can we not fight her? We have no choice. It's the commander's orders. Stop whining and let's go. There are 6 of us, I'm sure we can do something. That's right. We can overwhelm her with numbers. So what if she's a Class C beast? We can still beat her if we work together. I agree. Let's go and beat the commander's goat. Let's go. William was currently seated in one of the spectator seats in the Colosseum with his arms crossed over his chest. Today was Monday, and it was time for their martial training class. Grant personally asked William if he could borrow Ella so she could have a battle against the students. After asking for Ella's opinion, William accepted Grant's request and his mama went to the Colosseum to fight against the first years. The head instructor of the first years of the martial class division hoped that the young teens would be able to test their abilities against a Class C beast. The outcome was a one-sided massacre. Although Ella loved children, she didn't show the first years any mercy. She intended to make them realize how dangerous it was to face off against a beast that was as strong as her. She killed all of them in order to prevent them from dying in the future due to ignorance and negligence. Everyone fought Ella, with the exception of William. The fight was not a one-on-one battle, but a fight using a party of 6 people each round. At most, all of the students' battle prowess were in the silver ranks, which was roughly equivalent to Class D beasts. The officers, namely, Priscilla, Kenneth, Conrad, Spencer, Drake, and Dave were just a step away from the gold rank, which was roughly equivalent to a Class C beast, low. Even so, they still didn't win against Ella, who had gained a lot of fighting experience through life and death battles. For her, the children were just as strong as a hobgoblin leader. When the entirety of the first years had died under Ella's horns and hooves, Grant declared that their lesson for the day was over. All of the students stared at the Anglo-Ryan war ibex with newfound admiration and respect. They even bowed to her at the end of the class as a thank you for giving them a painful experience. Ella gave them a brief nod before changing back to her fluffy goat form and returning to William's side. Good job, Mama, William said as he brushed Ella's back. Me, Ella replied happily because she felt that she had done a good job in teaching the children about the dangers of fighting against strong beasts. She hoped that this would be a painful lesson that would save their lives in the future. William and Ella headed straight to their dormitory room to check up on Dia, Thor, and Ragnar. The three little guardians were currently undergoing their second growth phase and had gone into hibernation. According to the system, this growth process could take a few weeks to a few months before the three guardians woke up from their sleep. Right now, the safest place William could leave them was the head prefect's room. This room was protected by a special enchantment that forbade others to enter unless they were people whom William had given exclusive permission. Ella laid down beside the kids and looked at them with gentle eyes. She hoped that when the three of them woke up, they would be stronger and would be of greater help to William. William looked at the sleeping guardians and frowned. System, is there a place where we can hide the three of them while they are undergoing their transformation? I don't feel safe leaving them inside my room while I'm away. Before I answer that question, host, can you first answer a question of mine? Go ahead, William said as he lay down on the bed. As long as it's not math, I can answer it easily. The system became silent for a moment before asking William the question it had been meaning to ask. Host, what do you intend to do with the god points we received from the god of alchemists? Is there something that you plan to buy in the god shop? Actually, I also wanted to discuss this topic with you, William replied. I browsed the god shop yesterday and found some interesting weapons to buy. However, I can't decide what to get. Last time, you gave me a good recommendation with Rongominiad. If possible, I'd like to ask for another recommendation from you. Understood. Actually, I was hoping that the host still hadn't made up his mind on what to do with the god points. After calculating the host's possible future arrangements, I concluded that it would be best to not invest in any kind of weapon right now. The reasoning is simple. The host already has a few mythical grade artifacts that can be used to increase your offensive, defensive, and creative prowess. William nodded his head in agreement. Solile and the Yin-Yang Cauldron had indeed given him two job classes that he could tinker with for the time being. The Sun Knight required William to bathe in the sunlight to gain experience points. The Alchemist required William to craft items to gain mastery and gain skill points. With these two job classes in hand, adding a few more would only eat up more of William's precious time that he could use for other things. What do you suggest I do with the god points? Invest in domain creation. Domain creation. Instead of answering William's inquiry, the system opened up the god shop and showed William the domains that were being sold on the miscellaneous tab. 500 square meter domain equals 10,000 god points. 0.5 square mile domain equals 20,000 god points. 3 square mile domain equals 30,000 god points. 5 square mile domain equals 40,000 god points. 7 square mile domain equals 50,000 god points. Host, domains are miniature worlds that can support life. The alchemist god has several domains where he plants the rare herbs that he uses for his alchemy. This allows him to craft rare pills without worrying about a shortage of ingredients. Several other gods also have domains of their own to grow various products which they use to sell in the god shop. Host, did you know? You can also buy rare beasts in the god shop once you upgrade your main job class, which is the shepherd class. What? William gasped. You mean there are other features in the god shop that are not available to me? Yes. Right now, the host can only access the weapon, armor, accessories, and the miscellaneous shop. After you upgrade your main job class, you will be able to access the other shops like the beast shop, humanoid shop, construct shop, and gain access to the auction house. They also sell live beasts. And humanoids. William frowned. I can understand why they sell beasts, but humanoids as well? Isn't that the same as selling slaves? Host, you have to understand that not all the gods are as good as the ones that support you. If there is light, there will also be darkness. The auction house is also a place where the followers of the gods can auction the items that they found in their own worlds. It is a way to gain god points which then can be used to purchase other items in the god shop. In time, the host will also be able to auction off your own items in the god shop, but for now, our priority is to have our own domain. I propose that the host use 30,000 god points to buy the 3 square mile domain from the god shop. By doing so, you can house a number of beasts, such as the troll hounds that are currently staying inside your goblin crypt. Chapter 229, 1000 Beast Domain Part 2. William didn't think twice and immediately purchased the 3 square mile domain that was worth 30,000 god points. His current problem was having a suitable place he could send the beasts, that he was planning to add to his private army, to when he didn't need their help. Right now, Fenrir and the other troll hounds were staying inside the goblin crypt. It was the makeshift solution that the system had made as a temporary housing area for them. The system built a barracks inside the dungeon where the troll hounds could stay, which enabled them to explore the dungeon anytime that they wanted. The main reason William and the system had housed them inside the dungeon was because the goblin crypt supplied the troll hounds with an unlimited source of food, namely the goblins inside the dungeon. The additional good news was that they could gain combat experience while doing so. It also helped them develop their team battle tactics which would greatly increase their battle prowess. After the domain was purchased, the system integrated it inside the Ring of Conquest, by paying additional 5,000 god points. It also connected the domain to the dungeon, which would give them additional benefits once William's seal had been undone. William stood inside the domain and scanned its surroundings. There was nothing inside it aside from the sky and dry land. Host, we will now customize the domain, but we will need God points in order to purchase the things we need. The prices will be shown on your status page and you can arrange it in any way that you wish. William nodded his head and accessed the domain settings where various landmarks like trees, mountains, valleys, plains, marshlands, rivers, lakes, oceans, could be found. HMP. The days I spent playing Simp City were not in vain. William grinned as he started to modify the lifeless domain he had just bought. 10 ordinary trees only cost 1 God point, not bad, William thought as he looked at the ordinary trees that were available in the shop. Then his eyes widened when he saw several other trees that he had only heard of in this lifetime. Dragon Blood Tree, 100 God points each. A breed of tree that produces a red sap that could be used for making healing potions. Monkey Puzzle Tree, 100 God points each. A breed of tree that spawns 1 Cercops monkey per day. Maximum number of Cercops monkeys spawned per tree is 30. Quiver Tree, 100 God points each. A breed of tree that automatically creates 10 to 20 arrows per week. Additionally, once a month it will create a batch of 10 elemental arrows. Candelabra Tree, 1000 God points each. A breed of tree that spawns 2 random rainbow birds a day. Maximum number of rainbow birds spawned per tree is 50. If a rainbow bird dies, a new egg will appear on the tree and hatch 24 hours later. There were thousands of trees in the tree catalog and William couldn't possibly read them all. In the end, William bought 1 dragon blood tree, 1 monkey puzzle tree, 1 quiver tree, 1 candelabra tree and a Hyperion tree, which was recommended by the system. Hyperion tree, 1000 God points each. One of the tallest trees in the world. A breed of tree that spawns 1 blood eagle. Maximum number of blood eagles per tree is 1. Blood eagle. Birds of prey. Threat level, D, mid. Blood eagles are class D beasts that will continue to grow stronger as they devour the blood and flesh of their enemies. It has a wingspan of 3 meters and is capable of traveling 400 miles per hour in short bursts, making it one of the fastest birds of prey in the world. Its final form is the Blood Tempest, which is a millennial beast. William spent 1,420 God points on the trees, which left him a balance of 14,580 God points. So expensive. William scratched his head as he arranged the trees within the domain. He placed the Hyperion tree at the center of the domain, while he scattered the other expensive trees in the 4 cardinal locations. William added a lake and 4 rivers, which cost him 700 God points. Soon, the half-elf became too engrossed in designing his domain and bought a couple of things for aesthetic purposes. His added purchases cost him 2,000 God points, but his domain became more lively because of it. The weather control was worth 1,000 God points. This function allowed William to control the temperature and season of his domain depending on his whim. The other 1,000 God points was used to buy hills, boulders, shrubs, flower fields, and a wide villa that would serve as his vacation house. William was planning to add a few more things in the domain when the system stepped in and reminded him that they had limited funds, so he couldn't use it for luxury items. 10,980 God points left. William sighed because his Simp City project was put on hold for the time being. I need to buy grass that will grow in the plains for the herd to consume, William muttered as he thought of Aslan, Kronos, and the rest of the goats that were currently in Lant. He wanted to give them the best, so William decided to buy the most expensive grass he could find in the domain shop. High-grade spirit grass, 5,000 God points per hectare. A spirit grass that nourishes the body of anyone that consumes it and helps expel impurities. Can be used to craft certain types of pills and medicines. Continuous consumption of this grass will help strengthen the body over time. After it is eaten, it will take 5 days for it to regrow again. So expensive. William scratched his head, but still ultimately bought a hectare worth of high-grade spirit grass. He then evenly scattered it along the 4 cardinal directions in order to prevent the herd animals from fighting against each other. William vowed that he would buy more spirit grass once he earned more God points through his quests. William summoned the troll hounds to his domain and allowed them to explore the surroundings. He forbade them from making trouble with the Cercops monkey and the rainbow birds. William ordered the blood eagle not to attack anyone inside the domain. He promised that he would take it out to hunt from time to time, and the latter happily agreed. Every beast inside William's domain was automatically added to his king's legion. Although they were not creatures of the herd, they were inhabitants of his domain. Since William was the owner, that made him the master of all the beasts that resided within it. God points, 5,980. System, let's stop for now, William said. I'm tired. William had spent hours arranging his domain and he was now feeling very hungry. Designing the domain was fun, but very expensive as well. For now, he decided to stop and save what remaining God points he had for future purposes. He was about to leave the domain when the system stopped him. Host, you are forgetting something important. I am. William scratched his head. Should I have added a small mountain? Or perhaps a small valley? What did I forget exactly? Host, you forgot to give your domain a name. Ah. William clapped his hands in realization. How could I completely forget such an important thing? Very well, from now on, this domain will be called Thousand Beast Domain. Ding. Thousand Beast Domain has been successfully registered. New title acquired. Title, Domain Master. Domain Master. I am the master of my fate, the captain of my soul. Receives +10 enhancement to all stats. Increase production rate of everything inside the domain by 20%. William has received several titles. However, he could only equip 3 of them at a time. The system had told him that he could equip 3 additional titles after he had upgraded his main job class to the next level, which made William look forward to the future. The current titles he had equipped were Giant Slayer, Wolf Slayer, Domain Master, Giant Slayer. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Increase attack against giant race by 30%. Increase attack against monsters that are over 5 meters tall by 30%. Strength plus 5. Wolf Slayer. Time to save Little Red Riding Hood. Increase attack against wolf-type monsters by 50%. Strength plus 3. After making sure that everything was in order, William left the Thousand Beast domain and returned to the real world. Ironically, as soon as he appeared inside his room, he heard someone knocking on his door. Who is it? William asked. It is me, Kenneth, Kenneth answered. William hurriedly opened the door and saw his ex-roommate Kenneth with a worried look on his face. At first, Kenneth stayed with William inside the prefect room, but after the latter became the commander of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign, Kenneth returned to their old dormitory room to give William some privacy. Although William didn't mind if Kenneth stayed with him, the delicate-looking boy insisted that they separate their living quarters. I came to find you an hour ago, but no one was answering when I knocked, Kenneth said. Do you want to have dinner together? Okay, can you wait 5 minutes? There is something I need to do first, William stated. Sure. Thank you. William closed the door and teleported the 3 sleeping guardians to his villa inside the Thousand Beast domain. He had already prepared a room for the 3 of them to rest while he waited for them to wake up from their hibernation. The half-elf was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief after the 3 kids were safely tucked into their beds. Ella decided to stay with them instead of following William to the dining room. She had already eaten. She had tested the spirit grass that William had planted to make sure that it was safe for consumption and she was very satisfied with it. 5 minutes later, William and Kenneth headed to the dining hall together. The latter looked at William suspiciously, but didn't say anything else. His mission was to observe the boy and not interfere with his private life. Whatever secrets William had, Kenneth had no intention of prying into them. Deep inside, he was feeling guilty, so he did his job half-heartedly. The thought of William getting hurt because of his mission was something he didn't want to have happen. This was why he didn't report everything about William and kept some of his secrets to himself. He hoped that when they parted ways, William would still treat him as a friend, instead of a traitor who spied on him behind his back. Chapter 230, Estes and William's Bet. The prince is asking for a meeting, my lord. He said that he wanted to ask you something very important, the black-robed man reported to his lord. He insisted that his cooperation will depend on whether or not you can answer his questions and agree to his one request. The man seated on the black throne raised an eyebrow. The crown prince wants to meet me personally. Yes. This is part of his conditions for cooperating with us. Well, I guess it will not take too much time to answer his questions. I'm just curious about what kind of request he would make. The man leaned back on his throne and smiled. When and where is this meeting taking place? The lord inquired. 3 days from now at 2 in the afternoon, the black-robed man answered. The meeting place is the Sky Pavilion located on the east side of the capital. Very well. The lord nodded. Make sure to alert the Grim Guards as well. If the crown prince does anything funny, let's just dispose of him. By your will, the black-robed man pressed his fist over his chest and bowed respectfully. Interdivision battle, William muttered as he read the document in his hands. I thought that the academy was going to cancel this event, but it seems like they are trying to distract the students due to the recent events that have happened. EST, who was seated across from him, nodded in agreement. The academy is trying to motivate the students and let them recover from their current mindset. As you may have already seen, the rewards are quite generous. Indeed. It seems that the academy gained a lot of resources after the dungeon outbreak. Those resources were gained from the sacrifices of the students in the academy. It is right for them to share it with the survivors. William placed the document down and gave EST a smile. Just so you know, we will not be taking it easy on any of you. That goes without saying, EST replied. To be honest, I also want to have a serious fight with you. A battle to the death. Oh? You're that confident in beating me? I'm 30% confident in beating you. EST looked at William with a serious expression. He still couldn't fathom how strong William was. The fight against Kingsley ended in an instant and he couldn't tell if William was strong, or if Kingsley was really weak. Of course, he had seen their first duel in Lant a few years ago, but back then, William's power was sealed. Even now, William didn't have his powers, but he felt more dangerous compared to when he was facing off against the Cyclops in the Trial of Courage. Seeing EST's intense stare, William felt like teasing him, so decided to crack a joke. Why are you looking at me like you want to kiss me? William asked. He then picked up the cup of tea in front of him and took a sip. If you were a girl, I would definitely kiss you, EST replied. Hey, why don't you find an artifact that will turn you into a girl? Don't worry, I'll take responsibility and marry you if you don't turn back into a man. William placed the teacup on the table and smirked. He was impressed with how EST managed to turn his teasing around and decided to not continue with the topic. The half-elf had no intention of turning into a girl. He wanted to be the one on the top. Editor's notes, sad that he doesn't know that girls can be on top just as much as the men can be XD. How about we make the interdivision battle more interesting? William proposed. I'm sure that if the stakes are high enough, both of us will not hold back and fight each other seriously. What do you think? EST pondered and thought that William's proposal sounds good. For him, as long as there was something at stake, he would definitely give his best to win against William. What do you have in mind? EST crossed his arms over his chest. As long as it doesn't go below my bottom line, I can agree to it. William pressed his hands together and gave EST a smile that would put all con men to shame. Simple, if you win I'll, William said with a smile. But, if you lose, you will. EST was very tempted by William's offer. If he won then he would be extremely happy. However, if he lost then he would definitely lose a layer of skin. William's asking price was quite high, and EST didn't know if he should agree to it or not. Can you give me 2 days to think about it? EST replied. Of course. William leaned back on his chair as if this business deal between him and EST was not a big deal. The interdivision battles will take place a month from now. You still have plenty of time to think about it. Just make sure that you give me an answer a week before the event. Okay. Great. I'm looking forward to hearing your answer. When EST returned to his room, he immediately asked for Ian's and Isaac's opinion about William's proposal. Young master, if I am going to be frank, the one that has a disadvantage in this bet is William, Isaac said with a serious expression. Having put himself at a disadvantage, he then gave you a counter bet that was very hard to resist. However, within that offer is a trap. Isaac looked straight into EST's eyes as he continued his explanation. Knowing William, he wouldn't make a bet like this if he wasn't assured of his victory. This means that he is very confident in his ability to beat the young master. I agree, Ian nodded his head. Although William may act like a fool from time to time, his strength is the real deal. Also, I've been having this feeling that he is far stronger than what we see on the surface. This bet is too dangerous, young master. EST sighed because he had the same feeling as well. However, William's offer was simply too hard to resist. Even if his logical mind rejected it, his heart wanted it so badly. He gave me until a week before the interdivision battle starts, so I'll think this through before then, EST commented. Still he is very sly. Ian shook his head. Such an offer is simply too hard to resist. Which makes it equally dangerous. Isaac sighed. Frankly, I'd rather fight a terror hand again than fight William in a one-on-one battle. I don't have the confidence to beat him. The three boys all nodded their heads simultaneously. When they first met William he was just a simple shepherd in their eyes. They had no idea that a simple shepherd like him would be able to become a knight commander a few months after they were reunited. Chapter 231, Sweeter Than Candy. Will, where is Thor? Wendy asked. I haven't seen him for a few days. Is he all right? After classes, Wendy visited William and inquired about Thor's whereabouts. It had been 3 days since she last saw the puppy and she was feeling anxious. He's safe, William replied. He's just undergoing a growth phase, and now is a crucial time. In order to prevent anyone from disturbing him, I decided to put him in a safe place along with Dia and Ragnar. I see, Wendy was disappointed because she had really gotten close to Thor. The puppy would accompany her everywhere to the point that they even bathed together. Seeing her disappointment, William couldn't help but smile in his heart. Wendy was a straightforward person and her expression told him just how important Thor was in her life. Don't worry, as soon as he finishes his growth phase, I will immediately bring him to you. Really? Yes. William nodded. I promise. I'll take your word for it. Wendy smiled a bit before sitting down beside William. They finished their training an hour ago and Wendy visited William after she had taken a bath. The smell of scented soap tickled William's nose as the beautiful girl gave him a hug. The two teenagers' relationship had grown closer and Wendy was not the type of person to hide her feelings when the two of them were in private. William patted her hair and closed his eyes. It was impossible not to feel anything when someone was openly showing their love to him through their actions. If the two of us meet in the interdivision battles, take it easy on me, Wendy said as she rested her head on William's shoulder. You're not allowed to hurt me. Fine, William replied. I will just push you out of the arena. HMP. Try it if you can. You think that I'm easy to bully. Others can't bully you, but I can. Wendy pouted and lightly pounded on William's chest with her closed fists. William chuckled and grabbed her hand. He then placed it over his chest and kissed Wendy's forehead. Be good, William ordered. If you're too naughty, I will have to punish you. And how will you punish me? Wendy looked up on William with upturned eyes. What kind of punishment will the great commander give to this helpless damsel? William whispered something in Wendy's ear and the latter immediately blushed after hearing William's words. She pounded his chest again, while William didn't do anything to stop her this time around. Wendy's pounding lacked strength. Instead of feeling pain, William felt a ticklish sensation instead. Aside from his master, Celine, and his big sister, Leah, William didn't have any close girlfriends. This was why having Wendy around made him feel as if he had returned to Earth. Back to the time when he would look at Belle standing in the distance and bury his blooming love deep inside his heart. Since William could understand the feeling of loving someone one-sidedly, he didn't reject Wendy's advances and allowed her to do as she pleased. This in turn made William's heart, that had once become cold, start to open up to the idea of having a serious relationship with someone. A few minutes later, Wendy took a candy pouch out of her storage ring and started to eat. Her big sister, Charlotte, had given her another batch of candies last night, which made her very happy. William, on the other hand, was currently reading the document that had been given to him in their officers' meeting a few hours ago. It was the rules for the interdivision battles and William decided to memorize them and see if there were any loopholes that he could abuse. The martial division was always at a disadvantage when fighting against the magic and spirit divisions. Although William was confident that this year would be different, he still read the rules to see if he could add more odds to their chances of winning. While he was deep in thought, a slender hand pressed something over his lip. William unconsciously took it inside his mouth and immediately tasted something sweet. A candy. William thought. Not bad. This tastes good. William was about to ask Wendy for another one when a series of notifications appeared on his status screen. Ding. A low-level suggestion spell is trying to invade the host's sea of consciousness. Defensive actions initiated. Low-level suggestion spell has been successfully neutralized. William's eyes widened in shock and immediately asked the system to investigate the source of the low-level spell that tried to infiltrate his sea of consciousness. Analyzing spell. Successful. Spell name, Embrace of the Mind Weaver. Embrace of the Mind Weaver. A spell that is used to plant a powerful suggestion inside a person's sea of consciousness. This spell is very effective against those who have no resistance against magic. This spell invades and slowly corrupts the sea of consciousness from within, which allows the one that cast the spell to give their victim suggestions. This suggestion will make the victim think that it was their own idea and carry it out accordingly. Depending on how strong the victim's willpower is, some suggestions can be resisted. The more this spell invades the person's sea of consciousness, the lesser the chance the victim will resist the caster's orders. William took a deep breath as he tried to hold back the anger that was rising from his chest. He had unconsciously clenched his fists while reading the information about the spell that had tried to invade his sea of consciousness. Is it good? Wendy asked. My big sister from the magic division gave this to me. Do you want more? Yes, please, William replied as he unclenched his fists. How about you give me all of the candy in your possession? But, my big sister Charlotte gave these to me. Wendy hid the pouch of candy behind her back. I was not supposed to share them with anyone, but since you're special to me, I gave you one. William stood from his seat and walked towards Wendy. The system urged him to get more samples, so that it could analyze how the spell had been enchanted onto a piece of candy. Don't worry, I will give you something else in return, William said as he hugged Wendy. This time around, his hug was more firm as if not wanting her to run away from him. Wendy could feel that something was wrong with William, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. All she knew was that the current William was looking at her with a worried gaze and the arms holding her made her feel safe. I'll give this to you if you give me a kiss, how about it? Wendy teased as she shook the pouch in front of William. She had teased William many times in the past, but none of them had worked. The blonde beauty thought that the one she liked would back off after she gave her condition. Okay, William replied. He then used his left hand to raise Wendy's chin and kissed her lips. Wendy's eyes widened when William actually agreed to her request. When William's soft lips pressed against her, she felt a surge of electricity pass through her body. Soon, her eyes closed, as she wrapped her arms around William's back. When their lips separated, Wendy sighed in contentment because this was the first kiss she had ever received on the lips. She had always thought that her first kiss would be very romantic. However, the blonde beauty didn't expect that her first kiss would be taken from her in exchange for a pouch of candies. That was my first kiss, Wendy said with a slightly higher voice. Clearly, she still hadn't recovered from the effect of William's kiss. It was my first kiss as well, William stuttered. At least, this was my first kiss in this lifetime. One more. Wendy pleaded. Okay. William agreed. This time, the kiss was not only long, but sweet as well. When it was over, Wendy rested her head on William's chest. Her face was beet red, but there was a sweet smile on her face. On that day, she affirmed that William's kiss was far sweeter than any candy she had tasted in her lifetime. Chapter 232, Change of Plans. Inside William's room, the sound of steady breathing could be heard. Wendy's head was currently lying on Lam's lap, while the latter gently brushed her hair. She had fallen asleep about half an hour ago and the half-elf was keeping watch over her. How is she? William asked. She has ingested a good amount of candies. Fortunately, she's also a mage so her resistance slowed the invasion of her sea of consciousness. However, if she were to ingest more candies, the suggestion spell inside of her will strengthen to the point where the caster will be able to control her thoughts and emotions, to a certain extent. The suggestion spell isn't as powerful as the charm spell, right? No. But, there is still a risk that the victim wouldn't know that the thoughts inside their head were not their own, but of the caster who has placed the spell inside their body. According to my estimate, the progression of the spell inside Wendy's body is at 25%. 25%, William thought as she gazed down at the sleeping beauty on his lap. He was now faced with a difficult situation. The first choice was to cure Wendy completely and start his investigation on the matter. The second was to investigate this incident while Wendy continued to consume candy and accumulate the spell inside of her. The first choice was the ideal one, but it would also alert the mastermind that someone had tinkered with their spell. This in turn would alarm them and would give them the opportunity to hide safely in the shadows. Once this happened, William would have a hard time finding the culprit and the hidden danger would still be there. The second option was more risky because it would endanger Wendy's safety. The more candy she ate, the more the caster's spell would accumulate until it reached a point where he could subtly order Wendy to do things, while the latter thought that it was the right thing to do. System, do you have any suggestions? William asked as he continued to brush Wendy's hair. If possible, he didn't want to endanger this girl who loved him so much. I will leave the decision to you, host. William sighed internally. He knew what he had to do, but it still hurt him to do it. He felt bitter. He felt like scum. He felt that he was no different from the nobles who used people as their chess pieces in order to gain more profit for them. After thinking long and hard, William came to a decision. System, I want you to put a special tracker on Wendy. Place all the add-ons in it. See what she sees, hear what she hears. Also, monitor her emotional wavelengths. At the first sign of danger, alert me right away and we will go to rescue her immediately. That will be 1,500 God points all in all and it will last for 2 months. Are you sure of your decision, host? Yes/no. Do it, William replied without batting an eye. For him, Wendy was more important than God points. Special tracker successfully implanted. Host, I have a suggestion. What is it? I can attach a special tracker to Wendy so that we can also put a tracker on the person that gives her the candy. I heard earlier that she mentioned a big sister Charlotte perhaps, this person is connected to the mastermind pulling the strings from behind. Or she could be another one of that bastard's victims, William commented. Very well, use the God points needed. I don't mind. Understood. Deducting 1,500 God points from the balance. God points remaining, 2,980. William held Wendy's hand firmly. He would do his best to protect her to the best of his abilities, but this was a gamble that he needed to take. The half-elf had a bad feeling that there was a bigger plot behind this incident. He hoped that he was wrong because if he was right then this didn't bode well for the students of the Helan Royal Academy. Meanwhile, inside Carter's room. Carter was currently holding a communication crystal in his hand. He felt the familiar tug of his lord's magic which his superior often used to contact him if something important had come up. Master, I am here, Carter said respectfully as the communication crystal glowed red. Soon, an image of a handsome man with 2 small horns protruding out of his head appeared on the surface of the crystal. He was Carter's direct superior, and one of the generals of the Demon Lord, Zagarl Ranath. There is a change of plans, Zagarl said with a serious expression. I want you to massacre the students of the Helan Academy. This must be done in less than 2 months. After your mission, immediately return to the Demon Continent and accept the rewards that the Demon Lord has promised you. Carter frowned when he heard that his mission had changed. His original mission was to corrupt the talented students inside the Royal Academy and bring them back to the Demon Continent to be used as studs and broodmares for the demon race. Now, his mission changed to a massacre. Carter didn't know why the general suddenly had a change of heart, but he was in no position to question his orders. Seeing the confusion on Carter's face, the general sighed and continued his explanations. Your original plan will still be carried out, but focus on bringing the girls to the Demon Continent, Zagarl stated. As for the boys, use them as cannon fodders while you make your escape. I have already sent additional resources to you and it will arrive 2 to 3 days from now. Use those ingredients to strengthen the effect of your candies by 10-fold. That way, you will not have to wait for a full month before your spell takes hold of their minds. At most, you will only need a week or 2 to completely put them all under your thumb. Carter's expression immediately eased after hearing that additional resources would be sent to him. The lack of which had been the main problem he faced in wanting to make more candies in a short period of time. My liege, the Academy is going to have an inter-division battle a month from now, Carter reported. That is the perfect opportunity to conduct a massacre. How about we do it on that day? Good. Zagar pondered for a bit before nodding his head. I will also send some demons to aid you in transporting the girls back to the Demon Continent. I will allow you to pick 5 of the girls from the Academy for yourself. So, make sure to pick the best, understood? Thank you for your generosity, my liege, Carter bowed. He then pressed his fist over his chest. Glory to the demon race. Zagarl, too, pressed his fist over his chest as he gave his reply, glory to the demon race. Carter ended the call and carefully deposited the communication crystal back into his storage ring. He had things to take care of, so he left the room in haste. A few minutes after the professor left the room, a small black snake crawled out from under the bed. It then entered a small gap in the wall until it was safely out of the teacher's dormitory. It slithered through the grass until it arrived at a small warehouse used to store the Academy's tools and other supplies. A few seconds later, the snake transformed into a man wearing a hood. The man glanced in the direction of the teacher's dormitory once before turning into black mist. The chirping of a cicada echoed in the quiet afternoon. It was as if it was making a proclamation that the night would soon descend upon the lands of the southern continent. Chapter 233, A Talk with the Youngest Prince. Wendy was staring outside the window of her classroom. She would giggle from time to time which made EST, and the rest of her classmates, look at her with amused expressions. The scene of William kissing her was still fresh in her mind and it was making her giddy from happiness. She had completely forgotten that she wasn't inside his room anymore and was inside their classroom instead. Ms. Armstrong, it seems that you are very happy today, Layla said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Why don't you share to the entire class the reason why you're giggling like a mandrake? Wendy absent-mindedly glanced at Layla and blurted out the words that were on her mind. Commander William is a good kisser. EST, who was seated not far from her, dropped the book in his hand as his eyes widened in shock. Ian, who was seated beside EST, had his mouth opened wide enough for a golf ball to pass through it. The class descended into silence as they stared at the beautiful blonde girl who just realized that she had made a blunder. Wendy immediately covered her lips as her face turned as red as a ripe tomato. Oh. Layla raised an eyebrow. The new Knight Commander is a good kisser? Well, this certainly is a piece of good news for those who are infatuated with him. Now, Ms. Armstrong, why don't you turn your book of magic principles to page 69 and read the different magical reactions when elements collide. Wendy hurriedly opened her book and stood up from her seat. She then narrated the contents of the book to the class, while doing her best to keep her voice from stuttering. Her classmates started to giggle when they saw Wendy's panicked expression. Even so, there were 2 boys in the room who were not giggling. Instead, they were looking at Wendy as if she was a cheating cat that had stolen the cheese named William from their table. Mama, did you feel a sudden chill just now? William asked. I could have sworn that a cold wind just passed through me. Ella tilted her head to the side for a few seconds before resolutely shaking her head. The 2 were currently undertaking a topography lesson. Their instructor had asked them to create a map of the entire Martial Division, and the first years were now loitering around the premises holding scrolls in their hands, to draw various landmarks and create a detailed map to the best of their abilities. In war, map making was an important skill. Even an impromptu one could allow them to navigate their surroundings. As William was hard at work, a small wren landed on his shoulder and began chirping. It was none other than the wren, Ethon, that William had brought back from the whimsical forest. He had given the small bird an important task and it was now giving its master a full report of its mission. Great job, William said as he gave the bird a strip of beef jerky. The bird happily ate the jerky before flying away. It was going to resume patrolling around the academy while looking for suspicious individuals on the prowl. Since William still didn't know who the puppeteer pulling the strings from the background was, he asked Ethon to keep a lookout on anything that seemed suspicious. He trusted the bird's knack of gathering information from its surroundings, like the time when it warned him of the wyverns in the whimsical forest. Wrens were very common in the world and most people would not think much of them if they happened to see one. This was the reason why Ethon was the perfect choice for the mission. Although William was the knight commander, he was still a student of the martial class. He was able to skip lessons using his authority, but he wanted to be a good role model to his subordinates. He wanted to teach them how to become humble, even if they were in a position of power. After William turned a corner, he caught sight of a young boy wandering around the premises. The boy was followed by 4 guards whom William had estimated to be in the mithril ranks. He recognized him right away, because he had seen him at the party. It was none other than the youngest prince of the kingdom, Ernest Louis VI Helan. William moved to the side to allow the prince to pass. However, the prince didn't do that. Instead he walked towards William and looked up at him. What a happy coincidence to meet you here in the academy, Commander William, Ernest said with a smile. It is indeed a happy coincidence, Your Highness. William pressed his fist over his chest and bowed respectfully. Is there something that His Highness needs from me? Yes. Ernest nodded. Actually, I came here to the academy to talk to you personally. There is a commission that I would like for you to undertake. A commission? Yes. A very important one. William frowned. Currently he was in the process of finding the culprit behind the candies that were circulating around the academy. He really had no time to do a commission for the prince. However, since he was still a knight of the kingdom, he decided to at least listen to the prince first before deciding whether to accept his commission or not. Please, follow me to the commander's office, William replied. Whatever the prince wants to ask of me must be something very important. You wouldn't go out of your way to come here personally if it wasn't. Ernest didn't answer but only gave William a small smile. It was his way of acknowledging William's deductions. When the 2 arrived at William's office, the prince ordered his 4 guards to remain outside and guarded the door. Clearly, he didn't want them hearing his private talk with William. After the 2 were seated, the prince finally told him the reason why he came to see the commander of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign. You already know that our kingdom is preparing to fight against the 2 dynasties on our borders, Ernest explained. After making a detailed estimate of our kingdom's remaining forces, the king felt that we wouldn't have enough men to protect both fronts of the battlefield. William nodded his head. The king had a private talk with him before he left the party and told him that there was a possibility that the students of the academy would be mobilized once again to fight for their homeland on the front lines. However, it will not be enough, Ernest shook his head. Do you know why the 2 dynasties have been able to stand in the southern continent while avoiding being conquered by the Helan and Frisia alliance? No, William answered. He was not too familiar with the 2 dynasties beyond their borders because he was too busy training his knight order to become an independent unit during the war. It's because of their guardian beasts, Ernest stated. Both dynasties have guardian beasts that protect their dynasties. According to the reports, these 2 guardian beasts are myriad beasts. What is more troublesome is that these 2 beasts are said to be only a step away from becoming calamities. If they join the battle then we will not have enough forces to stop them, and this is also the reason why I came to find you, Commander William. We need you to go with the kingdom's ambassador, Sir Jerkins, and travel to the north where the tribes are congregated. We need their help to resist this invasion from our neighbors. Ernest lowered his head. Alone, the Helan kingdom doesn't have any chance of victory. The youngest prince then glanced at Ella who was standing beside William. The king and I believe that the ambassador will not be able to convince them if he went alone. This is why we want you to accompany him in this undertaking. William tapped the top of the table with his fingertip. This was indeed an important mission of the kingdom and a mission he couldn't ignore. Ella had once told him about the mighty tribes that lived in the north. The tribes that raised Anglo-Ryan war ibexes as their mounts, which prevented the kingdom from conquering them. It was the era when the southern continent was still in a turmoil of warring kingdoms and dynasties who were battling for supremacy. The half-elf was currently torn between doing his duty and protecting someone important to him. He knew how important this mission was, but he was unwilling to leave Wendy in the academy to gradually be corrupted by the mastermind hiding in the shadows without him around to protect her. Ernest waited patiently for his answer. He eyed William with concealed interest. EST had often told him stories about this half-elf who had saved his life twice many years ago. The youngest prince wanted to know if William was really as amazing as the stories that were told to him by the person whom the young prince loved and respected in his heart. Chapter 234, The Town of Northwell. Lionheart flapped his wings as he fought against the wind currents. Dave, who was wrapped in thick clothes, was currently sitting behind the griffin's back as they traveled through the dark skies of the northern regions. The flying carriage they pulled behind their backs flew steadily amidst the strong winds that passed over them. Flying alongside them was another griffin pulling a flying carriage that belonged to the foreign ambassador of the Hellan kingdom. These two carriages flew side by side throughout the night in order to arrive at their destination as soon as possible. Inside the carriage of the Anglo-Ryan war sovereign, Wendy slept peacefully with her head resting on William's lap. She was covered with a warm blanket and a sweet smile hung on her lips. William, too, had his eyes closed. His right hand rested on the armchair of the couch, while his other hand rested on top of Wendy's hand, which was placed over her belly. The other members of the Anglo-Ryan war sovereign were similarly resting on the comfortable couches inside the carriage. Flying carriages were built for long travels, so there was sufficient space inside to accommodate up to a dozen people. Ian looked at William and Wendy with an envious gaze. With a glance, he could tell that their relationship had grown closer and he was feeling bitter about it. It's not fair, Ian thought. We were the ones who saw him first. Ian covered his face with a blanket because he didn't want to look at the two that were making his heart ache with bitterness. He doesn't understand why he was feeling this way, but the thought of William being together with Wendy was making him feel sad. Kenneth opened his eyes and gave his ex-roommate and the beautiful girl sleeping on his lap a glance, before he, too, closed his eyes to sleep. For him, it didn't matter who William ended up with. What was important to him was the boy's happiness. On this journey to the north, William brought his own night squad with him. Wendy, Ian, Kenneth, Bruno, Brutus, Amelia and Dave were the people he had chosen to accompany him on his mission. At first, he was planning to bring Priscilla or Spencer along, but rejected it after some careful consideration. Priscilla was his vice commander and she needed to be in the academy in case of an emergency. As for Spencer, he was Wendy's twin brother, so William wanted to bring him along at first. However, knowing the Siskin's overprotective tendency, he decided to kick him off his list. Since he had already accepted Wendy's feelings for him, having a third wheel was annoying. Of course, Spencer discovered that his sister was going to accompany William on his mission. Because of this, he decided to tag along as well. He tried to convince William to take him, but the half-elf refused firmly. The excuse William gave Spencer was that the interdivision battle was just around the corner and he had to train his subordinates properly in order to have a chance of winning. Naturally, Spencer didn't buy his BLLSHT, but he was powerless against the commander of a night order, so he grudgingly took a step back while cursing William inside his heart. On the second day after they left the academy, the group finally saw the famous mountains of the northern regions in the distance. I can't even see the peak of the mountain, Wendy muttered as she gazed at the towering mountain in the distance. White clouds shrouded the peak of the Kirinter Mountains and only the middle part of it could be seen. They were currently camping 10 miles away from the base of the mountain and having their breakfast. All of them were wearing winter clothes, because the temperature was very cold. William passed Wendy a cup of coffee before drinking his own. It was the biggest mountain that he had seen in both of his lifetimes. Although he didn't have the opportunity to see Mount Everest, the highest mountain on Earth, he had seen pictures of it in magazines and watched documentaries about it on television. For some reason, William felt that the Kirinter Mountain's height surpassed it by a good margin. As to how high that margin was, he couldn't really tell at this point in time. Take a good look at it, ladies and gentlemen, Sir Jerkins said as he made a gesture towards the mountain. This is the last frontier of the southern continent, and hailed as the unconquerable lands of the north, the Kirinter Mountains. The members of William's group had been briefed about the contents of their mission during their journey. Of course, the part about the war was not said in order to prevent any leakage in information. William only told them that the Hellan Kingdom had finally decided to form an official alliance with the northern tribe and their duty was to ensure that the proposed alliance would come into fruition. What are our chances of success, Sir Jerkins? Amelia asked. I've heard from my father that the northern tribes don't like to deal with the people in the kingdom. Amelia's father and the ambassador were good friends. Sir Jerkins would often come to visit them whenever he had time, so Amelia treated him as if he were her own uncle. Of course, she still called him Sir to show her respect for his position in the kingdom. Sir Jerkins' gaze softened as he looked at the young lady whom he treated like his own niece. He then smiled and spoke his honest take on the matter. Our chances of success are less than 10%, Jerkins admitted. This is why we should do our best this time around. I just pray that we came at a good time and that the chieftain is in a good mood. An hour later, they cleared their camp and resumed their journey. Their destination, the town of Northwell at the base of the mountain. It was one of the 3 towns that the tribes used to trade with the Hellan Kingdom. According to their agreement, teleport gates were not allowed to be erected in any town near the base of the Kirinter Mountains. This was to prevent any attempt at invasion from the Hellan Kingdom. When the 2 griffins landed near the gates of the town, the guard captain blew a horn to alert the mayor of their arrival. Sir Jerkins smiled wryly when he heard the horn because he was familiar with the sound it made. The tribes used different horns to pass their messages and the horn that the guard captain used was the horn to announce that pesky guests had arrived in their domain. Well, at least they didn't sound the horn of battle. Sir Jerkins shook his head helplessly as he ordered the griffin rider to stand his ground. He didn't want the first lookout of the tribes to have a bad impression of them. Because if they somehow annoyed this particular mayor, forget about going to see the chieftain. They would immediately be barred from climbing the mountain. A sturdy man, who looked like a barbarian bred for war, walked out of the town's gate with a group of people behind his back. His name was Caudale Gunnar, the mayor of Northwell. He held the title the First Guardian because he was responsible for protecting the main town at the base of the mountain. Sir Jerkins, you're back again. Caudale snorted. His tone was laced with displeasure towards this bearded ambassador who always had a smile on his face. Sir Jerkins gave Caudale his trademark gentleman smile and nodded his head. It's been 2 years since my last visit. I hope you've aged well during that time, Lord Caudale. William and the rest of his order also disembarked from their carriage and stood behind Sir Jerkins. The red-headed boy wanted to know more about the mayor, and decided to let the ambassador do all the talking. Caudale scoffed and scanned the people that had arrived in his domain. He then gave Sir Jerkins an annoyed gaze and asked him the most important question. Why are you here? Caudale asked. He was a busy person and was preparing to meet with the great chieftain because of the ceremony that was about to take place. I came to meet with the great chief to pass along the message of our king, Jerkins replied. My king also asked me to personally deliver gifts to his excellency and wish him well. HOH? Gifts you say? Caudale sneered. So, are those kids the gifts you are talking about? Well, they're not half bad. Sir Jerkins chuckled and waved his hand. Lord Caudale, please, don't tease the children. They are here to assist me in my mission to see your great chieftain. Caudale clicked his tongue, but still nodded his head. He then signaled for his men to open the gates and allow their entry. Although they did their best to not show it on their faces, William and the rest were very curious to see what the towns in the northern tribes were like. They wanted to know how these indigenous people lived, and the secret of how they had retained their autonomy for hundreds of years. Chapter 235, Tribe Gathering. As soon as they entered the gates, several pairs of eyes turned in their direction. Some were curious, others surprised, while some held contempt. It was quite easy to tell who was friendly and who was not. Those who were not openly glaring at William's group were the friendly ones among the northerners. Even Lord Caudale, the mayor of Northwell, had shown his dislike openly and didn't even bother to hide it. The tribes were proud people. For them, being straightforward was their way of life. They hate schemes, and would rather resort to a fight than be forced to pull some dirty tricks. The tribes of the north all had pale skin and their bodies were quite sturdy. Even the women had lean and toned bodies that boasted enough strength to make the usual thugs think twice before making a pass on them. They were wearing clothes made from the furs and hides of the beasts that could be seen within their domain. Wolf, mammoths, bears, and other fierce beasts that the warriors of the tribe encountered on a daily basis. Wendy and Amelia stood out from the group because both of them were beauties. The teenage boys who were of marriageable age whistled at them to show their appreciation. The two girls were not used to this kind of treatment because both of them were nobles. They had been protected by their families from any form of vulgarity that they were finding it hard to keep the calm expressions on their faces. Brutus and Bruno flanked Amelia on both sides, while William held Wendy's waist and pulled her closer to him. This was their way to tell the northerners that these two ladies were hands-off, but the young men of the tribes didn't seem to get their message. Aside from the town wall, there were very few solid structures in the town of Northwell. The majority of the residents here lived inside tents made from mammoth hide. It was not only Wendy and Amelia whom the residents were paying attention to. They were quite surprised to see a fluffy Anglo-Ryan goat, with a coat as white as snow, walking beside William. Here in the north, only warriors were allowed to rear goats. With a glance, the people could tell that the goat was well taken care of, which raised their impressions of the red-headed boy standing beside it. After arriving at the mayor's residence, Caudale took them to the living room where it was warm due to a fireplace that was burning brightly. Sir Jerkins' guards were not allowed to enter the residence. Because of this, they had no choice but to watch over their carriages that were parked outside the mayor's house. The ambassador didn't say anything because he already knew Caudale's temperament. The town's mayor sat on a big comfortable chair beside the fireplace, while William's group sat on the sitting mats that were provided for them. After everyone was seated, the talks finally began. You said you came here to talk to the great chieftain, right? Caudale asked. Are you planning to form an alliance with us so we can become your cannon fodders to fight your enemies? Sir Jerkins smiled when he heard Caudale's inquiry. His face showed a calmness that befitted his position as a foreign ambassador. However, deep inside, he was shocked that Caudale had known the purpose of their visit. This was a highly confidential matter and the people that knew about this mission were only a handful of people. Sir Jerkins was sure that none of these people would betray the kingdom, so there was only one possibility. They managed to get here first, Jerkins thought. We may be a step too late. It only took the foreign ambassador a brief moment to organize his thoughts due to the many years of experience in handling political negotiation with foreign factions. Cannon fodders? Nonsense, Jerkins firmly shook his head in a righteous manner. The Helan kingdom and the northern tribes have kept a good relationship for over hundreds of years. We have already had a few exchanges in the past to promote the strong bonds between our people. 2 years ago, your great chieftain even said that he would seriously consider forming an alliance with the kingdom. You were there when the great chief and I talked, remember? Caudale snorted, but didn't argue with his guest. Just like the ambassador said, he had been there when the great chief was on the verge of accepting the proposal for an alliance. There were even talks about marriage between the Helan royal family and the chieftain's family. However, there was one problem: Noah didn't have a daughter. The great chief requested that a princess marry one of his sons in order to finalize the alliance. This was the way of the north, and the tribes recognized these kinds of exchanges. Even though Noah wasn't able to fulfill that specific request, he decided to do the next best thing and played matchmaker for the great chief's granddaughter and his youngest son, Prince Ernest. The great chief considered the matter, but he said that he needed more time to think about it. After all, he loved his granddaughter so much and the thought of her leaving the north to live with the prince in the Helan capital made him sad. The great chief's granddaughter had just had her birthday this year and was now 11 years old. She was a year older than Ernest and some said that, even though she was still young, her beauty was starting to show. The elders of each tribe were even in the process of selecting their most promising youth to become the chieftain's next son-in-law. Caudale was even thinking of sending his youngest son, who was only 9 years old this year, to become one of the groom candidates for the great chief's granddaughter. That was how fierce the competition was and everyone was hell-bent on taking the initiative to win her good graces. The tribes will have a gathering 5 days from now, Caudale announced. The second eldest son of the chief is looking for a bride. Because of this, the tribes will have a gathering at the third peak of chivalry. I will be departing tomorrow, so you can come with me, but flying carriages are not allowed. Caudale had a gloating look on his face as he scanned the faces that were looking at him. We also don't have any available mounts for any of you to use. If you like, you can walk your way up the peak. However, by then, the gathering will already be over. Jerkins frowned. The only means of transport used in the north were the war ibexes, mammoths, sledge dogs, and llamas. They didn't allow any flying creatures to fly towards the peaks. Those who dared to do so would be shot down immediately. The only exception to this rule were the warriors of the tribe that had gained permission from the oracle that lived on the first peak of divinity. Can't you spare us a few mounts? I brought gifts from the capital. I'm sure that the great chief will love them, Jerkins negotiated. These gifts would also be a good present for the second warrior of the tribe. A/N, the eldest son of the great chief is called first warrior. The second son is called second warrior, so on, and so forth. Caudale frowned, but what Jerkins said was reasonable. However, he wouldn't allow all of them to climb the third peak with him, so he intentionally made things difficult for the ambassador and his entourage. I will provide only one llama for your group, Caudale said as he looked at Jerkins. And you will be the only one riding it. As for the rest, they can walk. Caudale was firm in his decision, and was even laughing internally. He really didn't like the representatives from the Helan kingdom and looked down on their attempts to form an alliance with their tribe. I'm looking forward to seeing the expression on Jerkins' face once he realizes that he's not the only special guest that will be attending our tribe gathering, Caudale sneered internally. The mayor of Northwell felt that this was the perfect opportunity for the northern tribes to head south. Not to form an alliance, but to expand their domain and conquer the rich and fertile lands of the Helan kingdom. Chapter 236, The two of you will become my fiancé. William and the others returned to their carriages because they didn't want to experience Caudale's hospitality. Only Jerkins remained inside the mayor's residence because there were still a few things he had to consult with Caudale about in regards to the tribe gathering that would be happening a few days from now. Inside the carriage of the Anglo-Ryan war sovereign, William was having a meeting with his members and discussing their next course of action. Wendy, Amelia, I am going to give the two of you an important mission, William said with a serious expression. From now on, until we return to the Helan kingdom, the two of you will be my fiancés. Okay. Hey. Wendy easily agreed to William's request because she trusted him completely. As for Amelia, William's order was too sudden and too ridiculous which made her unable to give a proper reply. William smiled at Wendy before looking at the bewildered Amelia who was looking at him in an anxious manner. Listen, we are going to a gathering where the second son of the great chief will be choosing his brides, William explained. Do you know? 99% of the time, the antagonist will always flirt with the female leads because they are beautiful or they fall in love at first sight upon seeing them. I still don't understand? What does that have to do with me becoming the commander's fiancé? Amelia asked back. The reason is simple. If we are going to follow the standard script of light novels, Wendy and you will become the prime bride candidates of the second son of the great chief if the script has to be followed, William answered. I am very sure of it. Then, I will have no choice but to fight with him in a duel in order to prevent the two of you from becoming his lovers. Amelia blinked her eyes once then twice before reluctantly nodding her head. Although she still didn't fully understand William's words, she couldn't deny the possibility of being targeted by the second son of the great tribal chief of the northern tribes. Ian was frowning, but didn't interject his thoughts into the conversation. He also understood William's logic and it would give the two girls added protection if they were to go and meet the ruler of the Kirinter Mountains. I understand, Amelia replied weakly. But, I'm not very good at acting. It's fine. All you need to do is, William gently held Wendy's shoulder and pulled him closer to him. Stick to me whenever there is an opportunity. Like this. As if helping William show the right way of showing affection, Wendy hugged William's body and rested her head on his chest. Her eyes were closed and there was a sweet smile on her face. Clearly, she wasn't acting. She was really showing her affection to William, which made Amelia blush in embarrassment. I know that this is going to be hard. William understood Amelia's hesitation because it was only natural for her to act this way. But, if you are given a choice between becoming my fake lover, or becoming the bride of the chief's son, what would you choose? This was a no-brainer question for Amelia. She'd rather become William's fake lover than be forced to marry someone she hadn't even met. They were in the northern regions and not in the Helan kingdom. They were in enemy territory and if the tribes were hell-bent to keep them there, it would be very hard for them to escape their grasp. I understand. Amelia sighed. I will do my best to act as the commander's fiancé. Please, forgive me if I'm no good. It should be me who should be asking for your forgiveness. William bowed his head in apology. I'm sorry, Amelia. Raise your head, Commander. This is a mission. I will do my part as a member of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign. Thank you. After Amelia accepted William's suggestion, the half-elf discussed possible scenarios that might happen. It is almost a guarantee that a duel cannot be avoided, William said. When this happens, I want all of you to remain calm and not move from your positions. I will handle everything. As for you, Dave, you will leave Northwell after we start our climb to the peak. Return to the place where we camped earlier and wait for my signal. You remember how it should feel, right? Dave nodded his head. As one of William's true knights, William would be able to summon him once a day, just like how he could summon the members of his herd anytime. When they were still in Lont, William secretly tried using this ability to summon Dave and Conrad. After their initial surprise, the three found the knight summoning a very sound strategy in storming the enemy's base once William had made a successful infiltration. This was another one of his trump cards and the reason why he left Conrad at the academy. The half-elf was confident that he would be able to summon his dragon knight as long as they were both in the southern continent. You said you wanted to see me, a man wearing a grey robe greeted Lionel while the prince was having some tea inside the Sky Pavilion. The Sky Pavilion was actually a high-class brothel that was reserved only for the nobility of the Helan Kingdom. Although this was a brothel, this was not a place for prostitution. The ladies that worked here only used their charms and skills to entertain their guests. Singing, dancing, playing musical instruments, and other literary arts were the foundation of the Sky Pavilion. Harassing and molesting the ladies of this establishment was strictly prohibited. Any offenders would immediately be thrown into the jails of the Helan Kingdom. Some of them would never see the light of day again. Lionel raised his head and made a gesture for his guest to sit down in front of him. The man wearing the robe nodded his head and sat according to the prince's wishes. A pretty lady that served as the prince's personal maid, poured the newcomer a cup of tea before leaving the room. As soon as the door closed, Lionel took a scroll from his pocket and placed it on top of the table. The man wearing grey robes picked it up and began to read its contents. He read silently for 2 minutes before returning the scroll on top of the table. If the two of us are going to work together, then it is only fair for our side to show you our sincerity, the man said in a business-like tone. The first answer to your question is yes. Lionel sighed internally because his suspicion was confirmed. The first question written in the letter was whether the secret organization had already found the hidden domain. The answer to your second question is another yes. The man continued. We are willing to give you a quarter of the gains we can get from you know what. Lionel nodded his head. His second question was whether the organization was willing to give the prince a slice of the riches that would be found inside the domain of the first king of the Helan Kingdom. Even though it was only a quarter, that was already a good bargain for him. The answer to your third question will depend on your ability. The man chuckled. We have no need for useless people. There are plenty of candidates to choose from. Remember that, okay. Lionel's third question was if they were really going to support him in becoming the emperor of the southern continent. Depending on his performance, they could discard him anytime if he didn't meet their expectations. As for your last question, the man rubbed his chin. Although it will require a lot of effort on our part, we can do it. The man paused and clapped his hands as if remembering something. A month from now, the Helan Royal Academy is going to have an inter-division battle between all the year grades, right? The man inquired. I think we can have the princess visit during that time to promote the good relationship between the two kingdoms. I think that there will be nothing wrong with that arrangement. Lionel clenched his fist as he kept the calm expression on his face. Deep inside, he was feeling excited. At the end of the scroll had been his biggest request. Lionel asked the organization to show him their sincerity by bringing the third princess of the Kingdom of Frisia to the Helan Kingdom. Lionel promised that he would work with them if they were able to accomplish this task, and the man in front of him promised that he would comply with his request to have the princess visit their kingdom. Finally, I will be able to see her again, Lionel thought happily. Sidonie, after many years, I will once again gaze upon your beauty. The man wearing the grey robe eyed the prince with a friendly smile. He answered all of the questions truthfully because he really had no interest in ruling the southern continent. What he planned to achieve was a greater calling. Something that mere mortals couldn't possibly comprehend. He would gladly hand the southern continent to Lionel on a silver platter if the prince could acquire the key for him. The key that opened the domain that held the secret to immortality. Chapter 237, A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. Caudale led the way up the mountain while riding on an Anglo-Ryan war ibex. He turned his head to look at the stragglers who were walking behind their group and sneered in his heart. He thought that William and the others would beg him to give them some mounts to help climb the mountain, but they didn't do it. Instead, they just walked as if they were tourists doing some sightseeing. We are increasing the pace, Caudale announced. He then urged his partner to run and the rest of his retainers followed behind him. Jerkins turned to look at William, and the latter only nodded his head. They had already talked about this. If Caudale decided to leave them behind, Jerkins was to follow him closely. William assured the ambassador that they would be fine. He insisted that Jerkins should just focus on keeping up with Caudale's group, instead of worrying about them. With a wave of his hand, Jerkins urged his mount to run after the war ibexes in the distance. They're already gone, Brutus commented. Are you sure we're going to be fine, Commander? William smiled and nodded his head. Gate open. Suddenly, 6 war ibexes appeared behind William. The half-elf hugged all of them and patted their heads affectionately. Let me introduce you to my friends that will help us reach the third peak of the Kirinter Mountains, William said. This is Kronos, Aslan, Baldur, Echo, Keith, and Jed. Don't worry, they are very friendly. As long as you don't do anything to hurt them, they will not do anything to any of you. Ironically, the war ibexes were wearing custom-made saddles that allowed everyone to mount them easily. William helped Wendy mount Ella's back because the two of them would be riding together. After making sure that the beauty in front of him was properly seated, he glanced at his subordinates to check if they were having any problems. Fortunately, all of William's members had plenty of practice riding different beasts, so they easily adapted to their new traveling partners. Let's go, William ordered, and Ella led the sprint up the mountain. The other goats ran behind their leader in a uniformed manner without having their riders order them on what to do. 5 minutes later, Caudale's party appeared in their vision. The mayor of Northwell heard hoofbeats coming from behind their entourage and turned his head to look. He almost fell from his mount when he saw William's group catching up to them. What shocked him the most was that all of them were riding Angorian war ibexes. The war ibexes held a special status among the northern tribes and only warriors were allowed to ride them. Even in Caudale's own entourage, only 3 people had war ibexes and the rest were riding llamas. This just proved how hard it was to have a war ibex as a mount within the northern regions of Kirinter. William maintained a gap of 50 meters between his group and Caudale's. He knew that if he got closer to Caudale's group, the latter would question him about how he got the war ibexes. What William didn't know was that each war ibex in the northern region had a special rune stamped on them that proved that they belonged to the northern tribes. Of course, these runes were not present on the goats in William's herd because they were not raised in the Kirinter Mountains. This meant that they didn't belong to the tribe and the latter couldn't force William to surrender these goats to them. Although he still had doubts in his mind, Caudale didn't stop his mount from climbing the mountain. He could ask his questions later. What mattered right now was to get to the third peak as soon as he could. The travel towards the peak usually took 2 days from the base of the mountain. Only the beasts raised by the northern tribe would be able to climb without being attacked by wild beasts because of the runes embedded on their body. These runes signified that they belonged to the divine oracle, and no beasts that resided within the mountain were allowed to attack them. When the sun was about to set, Caudale called for a halt and his group started to set up camp. William didn't join Caudale's camp, but set up his own. Although there was no snow in their location, the temperature was very cold. Fortunately, they had prepared adequately for their mission, and there was no danger of suffering from frostbite. Just as William expected, Caudale wasn't able to resist his curiosity and walked towards their camp. He looked at the war ibexes that were resting on the ground with a fierce gaze. It was as if he was looking at a woman who had the beauty to bring down nations. As an veteran warrior, he was also an expert when it came to appraising beasts. With a glance, he could tell that the war ibexes were of the highest grade. These kinds of goats could only be ridden by the elite warriors of the great chieftain, who went by the name Garm. They were the elite defenders of the Kirinter Mountains that prevented the kings of the Helan Kingdom from conquering their domain. Boy, where did you get these goats? Caudale asked without even looking at William. He was so focused on admiring the goats that he found it beneath him to even glance at the half-elf, whom he treated as one of Jerkin's attendants. William ignored him and started to throw some vegetables into the pot in front of him. He was planning to make some vegetable soup that would warm them up for their long night in the mountains. Caudale frowned because he didn't hear William's reply. He then finally turned his head to look at the boy who was busy stoking the campfire to cook their dinner. Boy, didn't you hear what I said? Caudale asked. This time, he made sure to increase the volume of his voice. Oh, them. William scratched his head. I saw them wandering around at the base of the mountain. Maybe they got so attracted to my handsome face that they decided to help us climb the mountains. Isn't that right? William faced the goats as he asked them this question. Me. See. William smiled as he looked back at Caudale. It's not my fault I was born handsome. Caudale's lips twitched as he did his best to stop himself from slapping the boy silly. There was no way that these goats would follow someone just because they were handsome. He had never heard such a blsht excuse in his entire life. Boy, I asked you a serious question. Caudale glared. Don't forget that, without my approval, you and your group would be barred from entering the third peak. And who told you that I needed your approval? William asked back. The system had already informed him of the rules of the Kirinter Mountains. No one was allowed to attack anyone that was being accompanied by an Angorian war ibex. Doing so was tantamount to attacking the dignity of their guardian deity. No tribe would dare to commit such a nefarious act, not even Caudale who had just remembered this age-old rule. In the Kirinter Mountains, there was a myriad beast that was close to becoming a demigod. They said that the myriad beast was a celestial goat that could see everything that happens inside its domain. For as long as the tribes of the north followed its rule, its protection would remain intact. This was the reason why none of the former kings of the Helan Kingdom were able to invade the northern region. When they found out what kind of being lived in this domain, they decided to scrap their plans of expansion. Only stupid people would dare to poke a hornet's nest and face the wrath of a pseudo-demigod. Go back to your camp, William ordered. You have no power here. William closed the lid of the pot as he waited for it to boil. He didn't say anything when he was still in the town of Northwell because the system was busy collecting data at that time. One of its functions was to unearth the recorded history of a location. The only condition was that William had to be in that location as well. When the system discovered this rule, it immediately informed William, which allowed the half-elf to use it to its advantage. Fool. The moment I learned this rule was the moment you lost your authority over me, William sneered. Still, this is a very convenient loophole. System, do you think I could tame that pseudo-demigod? Maybe I can bribe it to join my herd. Should I attempt to tame it? The system wanted to say no, but then it remembered the goat that was currently resting beside William. If something like that was willing to follow William, then taming a pseudo-demigod was nothing. Of course, the system couldn't say that out loud, so it decided to compromise. There's a very, very, very small probability that you can tame it, host. William sighed and remembered the titanic green-scaled trollhound that he failed to tame last time. If he wasn't able to add a Class S beast to his herd, then he shouldn't even think about adding a myriad beast that was a step away from the Calamity class. That would just be kicking an iron plate without boots on, and it might even cause the northern tribes to hunt him to the ends of the world. While William was pondering about these things, Caudale returned to his camp with a grim expression on his face. He had a feeling that he had unintentionally brought a troublemaker into their territory. The mayor of Northwell glanced at William, who was brushing Ella's head. In his eyes, William was a wolf in sheep's clothing. A wolf that had snuck inside the goat pen, and the boy had been bold enough to do it right under his nose. Chapter 238, Unexpected Discovery. An hour before daybreak, Caudale and his group started their climb up the mountain. Jerkins went with them because it was what William and he had agreed upon beforehand. As the ambassador of the Hellan Kingdom, it would be best for him to travel with Caudale to prevent any mishaps along the way. William, on the other hand, was not in a hurry to follow them. They were now at the middle of the mountain, and would take at least one more day to reach the peak. The system did an in-depth scan of the mountain and found something interesting. It was none other than an undiscovered crystal mine. However, it was not any ordinary crystal mine, but a mine where one could excavate magic crystals. Magicians used these crystals to increase their magic powers, which allowed them to break through to the upper circles. For example, first circle magicians would easily be able to advance to the second circle if they got their hands on a high-grade magic crystal. It was similar to the beast course that William used to upgrade his Disciple of Thunder job class. It was quite unfortunate that William wouldn't be able to use his magic powers at this point in time. However, that didn't mean that he couldn't upgrade all of his mage classes to their max levels. William couldn't wipe away the smile on his face when the system informed him that there were enough high-grade magic crystals to upgrade his Prince of Thunder, Ice Wizard, Fire Mage, Water Mage, Wind Mage to their max levels. The system even proposed to take the entire mine and put it inside his domain. William readily agreed to this plan because having a magic crystal mine inside his domain would increase the magic density in the air and would give benefits to the residents inside the Thousand Beast domain. Half an hour later, William woke Wendy up and the two of them huddled together on an elevated spot in the mountain to look at the east. It was still dark and cold, but their intertwined hands under the blanket kept both of them warm. The others also started to stir, and joined the two as they waited for their first ever sunrise in the Kirinter Mountains. While they were waiting, Kenneth sat beside William and spoke his thoughts out loud. "I have a feeling that Caudale will make things difficult for us later on," Kenneth said. "There should be various checkpoints up the mountain, and I'm sure that he has already alerted all of them. I'm afraid that we will be barred entry when we arrive at their outposts." William nodded in agreement. "Don't worry. I have already anticipated that this would happen. Just leave it to me." Kenneth smiled because William's voice was filled with confidence. Because of this, all the worries in his mind disappeared completely. When the sun finally poked its head up in the east, the world was slowly filled with light. Wendy sighed as she rested her head on William's shoulder. This was not the first time she had seen the sunrise, however, this time was special. She was together with the person she liked and this made the experience extra special. After admiring the sunrise for a few minutes, the group had breakfast and resumed their climb. An hour later, William asked them to stop and led them on a detour around the mountain. After another hour of riding, they arrived at the entrance of a small cave. William ordered everyone to dismount, and he led the way inside the cave using a lamp that was powered by low-grade magic crystals. "Commander, where are we?" Amelia asked as they headed deeper to the caves. "Aren't we supposed to climb the third peak?" "I also don't know where we are," William replied. "However, one of the locals told me that there was a cave located in this area, and he said that there were ice lotuses that could be found here from time to time." "Really?" Amelia's eyes widened in shock. William hummed as he continued to guide them deeper within the cave. Ice lotuses were very rare herbs that most alchemists would buy for exuberant prices. They said that when you used it to make a special cream, your skin would remain youthful and would not wrinkle for 20 years. It was also used to craft special medicines that gave a strong immunity to cold poison, frostbite, and any diseases that were caused by the cold. It was also a very potent herb that could be digested raw by those who specialize in ice magic in order to drastically boost the effectiveness of their ice magic for a short period of time. It was another unexpected discovery by the system and a perfect excuse for the group to take a detour from their intended destination. "Wow! So many ice lotuses!" Amelia exclaimed. "Commander! Are all of these real?" "Of course they're real," William smirked. "Why would we waste our time coming here if they were not?" Over 100 ice lotuses floated on what seemed to be an icy lake within the cavern. According to Amelia's estimate, all of them combined would easily gain them around 30 million gold coins if they were to sell them in an auction house. That was more than enough money to arm the members of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign to the teeth. "All of you are to stay here to gather the ice lotuses," William ordered. "Remember, do it carefully or the lotuses will wilt and lose their value. I will scout around this area and will be back in an hour." William then patted Kenneth's shoulder as he whispered something in his ears. "I'll leave them in your care. Watch over them for me and make sure they don't get into trouble. I'll be back in a few hours." Kenneth reluctantly nodded his head. To be honest, he wanted to go with William, but since the latter had given him an order, he had no choice but to obey. He didn't want to break William's trust in him, so he could only endure and help the others gather the ice lotuses in the lake. William left the group and told them to wait for him until his return. He also asked Ella to guard the path leading to the magic crystal mine and to prevent anyone from secretly following him. An hour after William left his comrades at the ice lotus lake, he arrived at a dead end. We're here, host. The magic crystal mine is right behind this thick wall of ice. Understood, William replied as he took out Stormacaller from his storage ring. He took a fighting stance as he focused his aura into his weapon to strengthen it. According to the system, the wall of ice was over 10 meters thick. This was why the natives of the Kirintar Mountains were not able to discover that there was a treasure trove within the mountain. The ice was able to keep the power of the magic crystals from leaking, which allowed William to take it all for himself. Lightning God War Art, 7th form, William muttered as Stormcaller's lightning bolts congregated on its tip. He was planning to pierce through the wall of ice that had been protecting the magic crystal mine for thousands of years. Pierce through the void, Longinus. Chapter 239, The Deity of the Sky. With a thrust of his spear, the wall of ice in front of him was obliterated, creating a tunnel. The 7th form, Longinus, was an ability that could pierce through almost anything. It could even destroy magic barriers if William could empower it with enough magic or aura. Without a doubt, it was one of the aces up William's sleeve. The half-elf returned Stormacaller inside his storage ring and proceeded to check the mine that the system had discovered while scanning the mountains. The half-elf's eyes widened when he found himself surrounded by thousands of glittering magic crystals. It was not a magic crystal mine, but a magic crystal cavern. The very air was radiating with magic power, and William immediately noticed an unbelievable phenomenon in his status page. Gained EXP, 1000. 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 Oh, my, goddess! William exclaimed. Just being bathed by the concentrated magic in the air was enough for him to gain experience points. The system had already switched his job class to his Ice Wizard job class, and the experience points quickly filled up his experience bar. Host, we need to move the magic crystals inside the Thousand Beast domain ASAP. The magic is starting to leak and it might cause a phenomenon in the sky above our location. It would be bad if the natives were to notice. How do we transfer it? William asked. We will need to use the power of the 3 divinities in order to distort the surroundings and allow us to safely transfer the entirety of the mine inside the Thousand Beast domain. I will also need to use 1000 God points to buy the auxiliary consumables that will make the transfer less problematic. God points, 5980. Deducting God points to buy consumables. God points, 4980. William sat on the ground and called out to the 3 divinities inside his sea of consciousness. The king chess piece, the CPU core, and the lollipop glowed at the same time and pooled their power to distort the world around William, creating a minor god domain. The system carefully engulfed the entire magic crystal cavern inside the god domain. It made sure that not even a single piece of magic crystal was left out. When everything was ready, it immediately transferred the mine into the Thousand Beast domain. It had already prepared a place for it, and the mine was successfully relocated behind William's personal villa within the Thousand Beast domain. When William opened his eyes, he almost didn't recognize his surroundings. The entire cavern had been gouged out of the mountain, leaving behind a wide crater. It was also at this moment when William saw a 2-meter-tall block of ice that was emitting mists in the distance. Is this also a magic crystal? William asked the system. Please, don't approach it, host. Let me scan it first. Initiating comprehensive scan. Scan successful completed. William waited patiently. He was really curious what this big block of ice was and what it was doing inside the magic crystal cavern that he had transported inside his domain. Host, the block of ice that you see is a magical block of ice that is being maintained through the use of the power of the magic crystals inside this cavern. If my calculation is correct, this block of ice is thousands of years old. A block of ice that is thousands of years old. I'm sure that those who do ice sculptures would love to have it in their collection. Surprisingly, I found a beast trapped inside it, and after matching my scan against the database, I found out its name and origins. A beast trapped in the ice. William's eyes widened in surprise. After the initial shock ended, it was replaced by pity. For a beast to be trapped inside a block of ice for thousands of years was a very tragic thing. William cautiously approached the frozen beast and observed it carefully. The ice prison was not that thick, but all he could see was a blurred image of a beast that seemed to be only a foot tall and half a meter long. The rainbow-colored scales on its back illuminated the block of ice, which made it very attractive to look at. The creature's claws were curled up into its feet, and its head was raised in an arrogant manner. William assumed that it was taking a fighting pose before it got frozen in ice. System, my appraisal skill can't pass through the block of ice. Can you tell me the details of this beast? Certainly. I will post the details on the host status page. William opened his status page and checked the information that was passed to him by the system. Kasaganaga. Deity of the Sky. Demigod. Threat level, C, low. Cannot be added to the herd. When the world was still young, and monsters rampaged the land, the Kasaganaga was one of the few demigods who favored humans. It has the power to call out rain, which helped them grow their crops and ensured that their lands remained fertile. It was said that the rainbow-colored scales that cover its body had given birth to the rainbows that could be seen after a rain. This is a gentle beast by nature and dislikes conflict. However, whenever it is threatened, it will curl up its body and start to roll. Alongside rain, thunder, and lightning, the small demigod would charge at its enemies and was given the nickname Rolling Calamity by the gods of that era. This creature is the bane of all ant-type beasts. It has no known weakness. Hi yoke. William almost choked on his spit. Are you sure this is a demigod? I'm 100% certain, host. William didn't know what to feel after reading the information about the deity of the sky. Initially, he thought that all demigods were calamity-class beasts. However, the Kasaganaga that they had discovered was only Class C and currently trapped inside the block of ice, frozen in time. Chapter 240, I'm rolling. Did its power degrade after being frozen in ice? William inquired. He then looked at the rainbow-colored creature that had been confined inside the block of ice for thousands of years. It is highly possible. According to the simulations that I made, it would take at least tens of thousands of years before a demigod would degrade to this level. The poor thing, William thought. The half-elf had a good impression of the Kasaganaga because it was a demigod that aided humanity during their time of need. He thought of Spire back in the enchanted forest. The guardian of the herd was a pacifist and disliked conflicts. However, it would not take a step back if someone threatened the safety of its herd. William had a feeling that the Kasaganaga was similar to Spire, and decided to set the creature free on behalf of the humans that it had saved in the past. Just what kind of being could freeze a demigod? William asked the system. Host, only a demigod can fight a demigod. Maybe the Kasaganaga was defeated in a fight against demigods and was imprisoned in this block of ice. According to my hypothesis, the magic crystal mine was used to keep the seal in place. Now that it's gone, it is only a matter of time before the demigod will break free. William scratched his head. Should we break it ourselves, or wait until the seal is completely broken? Before the system could even give an answer, a cracking sound reverberated in the cavern. William took a defensive stance as several cracks appeared on the surface of the ice prison in front of him. Soon, the block of ice shattered into 100 pieces, creating a misty cloud of ice. William's breath grew ragged as the temperature around him drastically lowered. A minute later, the mist disappeared and a creature that was considered a myth stared at him with bloodshot eyes. Before William could even say anything, the Kasaganaga raised its head and shouted. I'm rolling. The small anteater then curled its body into a ball and flew in William's direction. Clearly, it was pissed off, and the half-elf just happened to be there to become a medium for it to vent out its anger. William dodged to the side and evaded the rainbow-colored scaled ball that was only slightly bigger than a basketball. The Kasaganaga hit the wall of the cavern, but it simply bounced off and resumed its pursuit of William. Wait. Why are you attacking me? William asked in frustration as he rolled to the side to evade the crazy deity of the sky. You long-eared bastards! How dare you and that stupid, big-boobed, elf goddess imprison me? The enraged anteater shouted as it continued to attack William. Bunch of ingrates. Humans are much better than you long-eared hypocrites. Even if the other demigods forgive you, I won't forgive you. As if answering to its anger, its speed gradually increased with each bounce it made on the walls of the cavern. At the start, William could still evade it, but the drastic increase in its speed made the half-elf resort to desperate measures. System. Spearman job class now activated. William summoned his wooden staff and used it like a baseball bat to hit the rolling anteater that was not planning to listen to reason. When the staff hit the beast, a loud clap reverberated in the cavern creating a mini shockwave. William skidded on the ground as he prepared to hit the Kasaganaga for the second time. Just like a never-ending tennis match, the two fought in a ridiculous manner. However, it seemed that the Kasaganaga realized that it was not strong enough to beat William in its current state. Although its power had degenerated due to being imprisoned for tens of thousands of years, it was still a deity and had plenty of tricks up its sleeve. William was about to hit it again with his wooden staff when he immediately rolled to the side to make an emergency evasion. There was no way he would dare to face the rolling disaster head-on after it had made last-minute changes in its physique. The Kasaganaga had increased in size, and it was now a 2-meter-tall, rainbow-colored wrecking ball. The Kasaganaga bounced off the wall and this time, the rebound was so fast that William had no time to evade. The rainbow wrecking ball hit him in the chest which sent him slamming towards the wall of the cavern, creating a cloud of dust. William only received minor injuries because he was able to equip his golden scaled armor at the last minute before he was hit by the rolling disaster. System, is there a way we can beat this thing? William inquired. Although he was in a disadvantageous situation, he didn't panic and decided to consult the system. This cavern is still unstable and under the influence of the god domain. If the host wants to take a risk, there is a way, but it is equally dangerous. What is it? If I am able to escape this predicament then I will cooperate. Very well, what we are going to do is this. While the two were talking, the Kasaganaga didn't follow up with another attack and simply hovered in the air a few meters away from where William had fallen. Ha ha ha. Foolish elf, the Kasaganaga roared while still spinning in mid-air. You and your stupid goddess will pay the price of imprisoning this deity. When I regain my divinity, I will drown your continent until all of you bastards start to grow fins. However, since you were the one who freed me from that prison, I will end your life and give you a proper burial. Be thankful because a deity will personally bury you. Now, die. William extended his hand with the intention of catching the 2-meter wrecking ball that charged towards him. The moment his hand touched Kasaganaga's curled-up body, the enraged sky deity disappeared from the cavern. Transfer successful. Kasaganaga has been successfully relocated to the north of the Thousand Beast domain. William sighed in relief as he lay on the ground while panting. Fortunately, the god domain that they had created to transfer the magic crystal mine was still active. With its help, the system was able to forcefully transfer the sky deity to William's Thousand Beast domain. Although the half-elf and the system were worried that their guest would turn their domain upside down, it was a risk that they had to take. They had been left with no other alternative. All they could do was trap the enraged deity inside the domain to keep William from getting hurt more. William closed his eyes and observed his domain from the sky. The Kasaganaga had landed near the candelabra tree, which was the territory of the rainbow birds, but due to the fact that they reminded him of a certain game he played back on Earth, he gave them the nickname Ungrily birds. As soon as it felt that it was in a different environment, the Kasaganaga landed on the ground while still in its curled-up state and observed its surroundings. The Ungrily birds that were nesting on their tree looked down at the unwanted guest that appeared in their home turf. Ungrily bird 1, WTF. Ungrily bird 2, F***ck off. Kasaganaga, where am I? Speak dumb birds. Ungrily birds, say what? Ungrily birds, F***ck off. The Ungrily birds were only Class E, mid, beasts, but they were a very rowdy bunch. All of them had different colors and abilities, but they all had one thing in common, and that was that they were all aggressive birds. They flapped their wings and attacked the Kasaganaga by ramming it with their bodies. William was surprised because what the birds were doing was practically suicide, but what happened next made his eyes widen in shock. When a red-colored bird hit the Kasaganaga, it exploded like a grenade. Red feathers scattered in the air showing that the bird had been completely decimated by the explosion. However, on top of the candelabra tree a red egg appeared. This egg would hatch after 24 hours and the Ungrily bird that died would be reborn again. The other birds also attacked the Kasaganaga with a vengeance. The orange birds inflicted earth damage, the yellow birds inflicted a stunning effect, and the green ones inflicted wind damage. When the blue birds exploded, they inflicted water damage. The indigo-colored birds inflicted slashing physical damage, and the violet ones dealt blunt physical damage. William almost felt sorry for the pitiful Kasaganaga who was forced to run away due to the relentless assault of the Ungrily birds. Shouts of FCKU, FCK off, say what, and the likes accompanied the fleeting sky deity as it rolled away to escape the birds that gave it a culture shock. You bastard elf! If you have guts, come and face me. Let's fight 200 rounds, the Kasaganaga roared in anger. Come out and fight me. William snorted as he let his consciousness return to the real world. He still had things to do, and the rainbow anteater wouldn't be going anywhere anytime soon. Since that was the case, he would just focus on the task at hand, getting to the third peak before dealing with this creature that seemed to have a very strong grudge against the elven race.